I would like to have it separated, so I'm not voting for everything at the same time. So that's the reason for my motion, to make an informed decision today.
I'm just saying that it just keeps, we keep breaking things out with no discussion. And I've requested discussion multiple times and then nothing happens, so I don't know why tonight would be any different.
All right, so moving on to.
Roll call. Roll call?
What's that?
The roll call?
Yeah, moving on to the roll call. Mr. Hale, would you please call the roll, please?
Mrs. Gordon?
Yes?
Mrs. DeFabio?
Yes.
Mr. Felber?
No.
Mrs. Davis?
No. At this point, we have a 2-2 split. Mr. Hale, would you offer some clarification?
Motion fails.
Just
This is
fails.
the majority of the board is present. If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's a tie, so nothing happens.
Yeah. No abstentions,
Yeah.
so.
I guess we'll go for further discussion later. All right, so we will move on. That item does not pass. On to my president's report. So once again, I would like to welcome all of you here, those watching online, those of you in attendance. We have a new staff who will be joining us. I especially want to welcome new staff members, coaches who will be joining our district this fall. I'm Tina Davis, and I'm honored to serve as your board president. Another special welcome in advance to all the twins from near and far who will soon be joining us this weekend for our city's annual Twins Day Festival. After a year off, it's definitely good to have this one of a kind event for our community. Most importantly, very much importantly, welcome to all you students who are here. It's so good to see your faces. And looking forward to you being honored here tonight. I hope you're all enjoying these last weeks of summer. There are only just a few weeks left, so make the most of this summer before school starts. Be starting in a few short weeks, and I look forward to everyone being in class every day in their own buildings. I cannot wait to see the amazing things that the students and the staff will be doing this school year. And speaking of school starting, I know we are all anxiously awaiting the direction of the reopening of our schools for this fall. And as a district parent, I've been hoping and praying for the students' return for quite a while myself, daily in school. And later in the meeting, we'll be discussing on the board regarding the reopening of the district and welcoming students back to the fall. With recent updates from the CDC, state and local departments, there certainly are a lot of things to discuss and consider in our discussion portion of the meeting today. And first and foremost, I know we all care about our children and are concerned about their mental well-being. Many have concerns for the children if required to wear masks in school, while others are concerned about the mental and physical well-being of their children who may be in the class with students unmasked. It's not our job to say that one student is more important than the other. All of our children deserve the best we can give them, and it's our job, however, to give all the students the best opportunities that we can in a safe educational setting in which they can thrive. On a personal note, our family had to quarantine twice last year, and my daughter 3 times due to COVID exposure and illness in our family. And my son, who never got sick from it, ended up missing a total of 4 weeks of school because of having to be quarantined. And I certainly was concerned about his mental well-being, his isolation from his teachers and peers. It's my sincere hope that we can avoid situations like this as best as we possibly can this spring school year. One thing is for certain, this board does have the best intentions for our students, and most every decision we make puts kids first.
Excuse me. Everyone's going to have to really speak into the mic. I'm getting reports that online they're not hearing. Get as close as you can.
Thank you. Thanks. I'll just repeat what I just said. One thing's for certain, this board has the best intentions for our students, and most every decision we make puts kids first and what is best for our students as a whole. We always have made our children's well-being and safety our #1 priority, including their mental and physical health and safety. We want our kids to return in an environment that is engaging, enriching, and is a safe place to learn and gain valuable experiences, social and extracurricular activities, a lot of variety of experiences. All of us sitting up here may not always agree with each other, and the democratic process can get messy, but we all have the best of intentions and with the best interests of our students in mind, and we are all
Ms. Davis. Good evening, Board of Education. Good evening, everyone. It's great to be back at the community center after we've been across the street at the high school for the summer, and we appreciate the hospitality of Mayor Yates and Twinsburg City Council. This is a wonderful place to have a meeting like this, and we thank them for allowing us to do that. This is such a busy time of the year. Our administrators are finishing up schedules, and we're finishing up all of the hiring. As you will note on the agenda this evening, we're making some recommendations tonight for personnel. And our back-to-school mailer is folded and will be dropped in the mail tomorrow. And electronically, our parents who would have desired the back-to-school mailer to be sent via email, that will be released on Saturday. So I guess it's off to the races as soon as the back-to-school mailer is mailed. And so we can expect that in your mailboxes or inboxes here in the next few days. Additionally, transportation is completing the routes, and this evening, Board of Education, we're excited to introduce to our community Stop Finder, which is going to help our parents understand when the school bus is close to their house and be able to meet their children there on a better time schedule for families. So I'm not going to steal the thunder of Mr. Desmond and Miss Abbott and Mr. Welker, but we're excited to introduce Stop Finder this evening as well. Routes for transportation will be mailed the week of August 9th, which is next week. So we're finalizing all of those details, and the long anticipated classroom lists will be posted Wednesday, August 11th. So boys and girls, I know you've been waiting to see who your teachers are. Wednesday of next week is the magic day, and that's when you'll be able to find out who your classroom teacher is, and then the excitement really begins. Board of Education, our annual calendar and financial report is at the printer, and that should be in homes by way of the mail the week of August 16th. So that is coming soon to a mailbox near you. And the other big thing that's going on this coming weekend, besides it being Twins Day weekend, it is Ohio's tax-free weekend for school supplies and school clothes. So from Friday, August 6th through Sunday, August 8th, if you have any back-to-school shopping to do, this is a good weekend to do it because you get that little bit of a break in the sales tax, and we always appreciate that too. And then finally, and sort of aligned to the tax-free weekend, our school supply lists are posted on the district website right on the homepage. So if you missed the email I sent a couple weeks back, know that it's out on the district website for you if you need to pull that. And I happened to notice I was at Drug Mart the other day, and they have copies on a table, so they're everywhere, I suppose. As Mrs. Davis mentioned, this is Twins Days weekend, and we are just delighted to be one of the hosts here in our school community. Mr. Andy Miller and the Twins Day committee has done a great job of putting together the Roaring Twinties, which is this year's theme. We're really excited that in the parade on Saturday morning, you'll get a first glimpse of our Tiger Marching Band. They've been practicing nonstop, it seems, and they're getting ready to go, as well as Twinnie's going to be in the parade. He's super hyped up and can hardly wait as well. So we are looking forward to a really great weekend. We made a switch this year at the request of the Twins Day Committee, and the Friday night event, which is for twins only, and the multiples and their families, has been moved to Tiger Stadium this year for a little bit of a change. And everything else, of course, is located up in the community park behind R.B. Chamberlain Middle School. So looking forward, it's a great community event, and we're always excited to host the Twins. And my job on Saturday morning is to drive the golf cart, the visitors, from our parking lot down to the square. And we try, those of us who are driving the shuttles compete against each other to see who has the twins that are coming from the greatest distance. So it's a lot of fun, and we can hardly wait to see who's going to win the prize this year. One year we had a set of twins from China, so that was pretty cool. So we'll see what the longest distance twin and their family will be this year. Our soft reopening week is scheduled for Monday through Thursday, August 23rd through the 26th. 1/4 of our students will be scheduled to participate in the soft reopening week activities each day on campus. And then principals will soon provide details to our families about all the particulars surrounding your child and their particular school. Parents of our students who will attend the Twinsburg Online Learning Academy through Ohio Online Learning will have the choice between 2 days to attend a parent orientation session, and those dates are scheduled for Thursday, August 26th at 9 a.m. or on Friday, August 27th at 2 p.m. And our back to school mailer will have those dates, and we'll be sending further information out to our families here shortly. This is one last reminder to our new families or families of our incoming kindergarten class that the district will hold new student registration next week on Tuesday, August 10th and on Wednesday, August 11th. Our district website has all the information about new student registration, and we ask that our new parents kindly just go onto the website under the For Parents tab and then scroll down to registration and enrollment, which is a link, and that'll take you right to the information that you need. And really, early registration helps us to plan and be ready for our students on the very first day of school. So if you happen to be new to our community or have a new kindergarten child ready to start school, please, if you can kindly go on the website and begin your registration process, we would really appreciate it. And Board of Education, this week has been sort of a week of celebrating. The other night, I was with Mrs. Jocelyn Rowetter, and she is a third grade teacher at Samuel Bissell Elementary School. And Mrs. Rowetter received the Excellence in Mathematics Education from the Martha Holden Jennings Foundation. It was a wonderful event. The best educators in Ohio are invited to this particular event. And Mrs. Rowetter is one of just, I think, 5 educators who received significant honors for their work that they do with the boys and girls in their classroom. Mrs. Rowetter's project, for which she received $7,500, is talking about algebra in the 3rd grade and helping kids learn the skill of algebra. And she's going to be using part of that money to actually provide professional development opportunities for her other 3rd grade colleagues. So really she has done a great job of building some skills already in our 3rd graders, and we look forward to seeing what she's going to be doing with this award that she's won from the Martha Holden Jennings Foundation. And also tonight, Board, we have 3 outstanding students to celebrate. And I'm so excited. It's been months since we've had students at our board meeting, and I would like to invite Riley Gates, Ainsley Wills, and Peyton Herring up front. And they are Girl Scout juniors. And I have to tell you a little bit about their award, so come on up, girls. So do you want to introduce yourself and introduce who's here with you tonight? You have to speak into the microphone. Okay? There you go.
I'm Ainsley Wills, and my mom is here.
Who's your mom? Can you point her out?
She's right there.
There you go. Welcome, Mom. Okay, you want to stand over here?
Okay.
Evaluate. And your name?
I'm Riley Gates.
And your name?
Riley Gates.
Riley Gates. And who did you bring tonight?
My mom.
Your mom is here? Okay, wave to your mom. There she is. All right, welcome, Mom. Okay, come on up and stand next to your friend. And here comes Peyton.
I'm Peyton Herring, and my dad's right there.
There's your dad. Well, welcome, Dad. All right, well, I want to brag on you all a little bit, okay? I'm supposed to turn it this way so they can actually hear me. So in Girl Scouts, when you're a Girl Scout junior, the highest award that you can receive is a bronze award. And that is a significant amount of work, and it really is a dedication to leadership and about caring, about teamwork, and community service. And so when I heard from Riley's mom that these 3 outstanding students were recipients of this award, we knew this was the perfect opportunity to invite students to our board meeting tonight, just so that we can celebrate with you a little bit. And so we have a proclamation for you. And when you get a proclamation, that's a pretty special thing. That means that you have gone above and beyond, and that you've done something that's pretty spectacular. So we have proclamations for each of you, but I will read them together and insert all 3 of your names in one proclamation, okay? So it says, this is a proclamation honoring Riley Nicole Gates and Peyton Riley Herring and, the middle names here too, right? Ainsley Elizabeth Wills, Girl Scout Bronze Award recipients. Whereas the Twinsburg City School District takes pride in its students' involvement in the community, and whereas the Bronze Award, the highest honor a Girl Scout junior can achieve, is a national award which represents the difference Girl Scout juniors can make in their community through learning leadership skills, discovering new passions, and watching how seemingly small actions make big differences. And whereas the Girl Scouts of Northeast Ohio encourage a Bronze Award candidate to explore her community identify a need, and choose and implement a project to benefit the community. And whereas these outstanding Girl Scout juniors, all 6th grade students at George G. Dodge Intermediate School, are members of Girl Scout Troop 90228. And whereas all the girls here are only 3 girls ever at George G. Dodge Intermediate School to earn the rank of Bronze Award. That's huge. Whereas our Girl Scouts are members of the Girl Scouts of Northeast Ohio, and for their Girl Scout Bronze Award project chose to research animal shelters, determine their needs, and then create more than 100 dog adoption kits for the Summit County Humane Society. The kits included toys, treats, top 10 dog care tips, food, doggy bags, and more. And whereas our Girl Scouts' commitment to leadership, service, and to our community is reflected in their steady, persistent progress toward achieving this prestigious award. Now therefore be resolved that Mrs. Tina Davis, President of the Twinsburg Board of Education, and me, Catherine M. Powers, Superintendent of the Twinsburg City School District, do hereby honor Riley, Ainsley, and Peyton of Girl Scout Troop 90228 on their achievement of attaining the Bronze Award. Congratulations to these wonderful Tigers. I'm so proud that you're students at George G. Dodge Intermediate School, but more than that, I'm so proud to be a member of the community where such young women such as yourself are just doing outstanding things. So let's show a round of applause. Well, I think your proclamation describes it very well, and really what you've done is just spectacular, and where you start today, you're going to take off and do even bigger and brighter things. So congratulations on your award. I can hardly wait to see you come back to school in a couple of weeks and just share this excitement with all of your friends, okay? Congratulations. All right, guys. There's a family moment for a photo if you'd like. Mrs. Davis, that concludes my report for tonight.
All right, thank you. I'm sure all those families are really gonna appreciate those kids when they adopt out these pups and big dogs. Thank you, girls. All right, do we have any committee reports tonight?
I do have one from Finance, met on July 28th. There are 3 items on the agenda: overview of the district finances, discussion about the athletic trainer contract, and the in lieu of transportation. All 3 of these items are being referred back to the board. We're requesting a work session with the entire board to review finances. We're still pending some legal opinion on the athletic trainer, and then again, in lieu of transportation is being discussed tonight. So that was the extent of the finance meeting on July 28th.
Okay, any other committee reports? I don't think so. All right, thank you. All right, so, we are going to, at this point, move on to remonstrance, a little bit early in the meeting, before discussion. And, we have one from, Jordan Weekly. We have 3 here. Jordan Weekly, and when you come up to, speak, would you please state your name and your address?
Good evening. Can you hear me, or do I need to take my mask down?
Maybe that.
We can hear you.
All right, we're
You
good.
just might be
Cool.
closer to the mic so it records.
Is that better for you?
Yeah.
Good? Cool. Awesome. Hi, my name is Jordan Weekly. I live at 10760 Ravenna Road, apartment 203. That's in Twinsburg, Ohio, 44087. I come here tonight, taking a deep breath, because it's an emotional one, to discuss busing for my daughter for her new school, Julie Billiards, in the fall. I come here because my daughter has special needs. My daughter is autistic with a laundry list of other diagnoses on top of that. We are asking for transportation to Julie Billiards because it is not a typical private school. The school, I don't know if anyone knows, is a school that takes on 12 students per grade per year of special needs kids, most of them being autism. I have tried to call multiple transportation companies around the state of Ohio, around northeastern Ohio. At least 30 so far. I have gotten one quote. The rest of them refuse to speak to me because I am not the school board or the school transportation department who handles these things. I know in past years, you guys have given out a lieu of transportation. My big problem I'm having is the one quote that I did get and what you guys give out. There's a huge, the quote I got is roughly $6,000 for a year. And the in lieu of is only $250 a year. I have, so you see that there's a huge gap. Like I can't begin to fill that gap. I'm unable to drive myself physically because of a condition that I developed after graduating high school. And I'm beyond devastated. Like I literally have no way to express the grief that I have, that I finally find a school that can handle Esther's needs. Unfortunately, we tried with Twinsburg for 2 years with her pre-K programs, and the best that we were given was that she would be pulled into a resource room where she would be the only student in there with an aide. There's a huge difference. I'm like, I might as well have just kept her home, which isn't an option because I have to go back to work. I have to work and my husband has to work. We do our best to find other options for her throughout the year, and I've been pulling teeth just to ask people if they'd be willing to take 1 day a week, because $250 won't cover what we can afford, what we can get. My family qualifies for free and reduced lunches, so we do not have money, as you're clearly aware. And I've never wanted to move such a large mountain by myself for my child as much as I wanted to move this mountain. We did summer camp for her at this school that they had run. And I can tell you that after the first week, I sat there and I cried. Because it was the first time that my child got the individual education as well as the individual attention that she needed for her direct problems. I've had multiple IEP meetings. I can't even begin to count the IEP meetings that I've had with the school. And there's nothing wrong with Twinsburg schools. It's unfortunately my daughter is more in need of things that Twinsburg can't provide because they do have more students. I wonder when you guys are gonna vote on this so that I can try and figure out what to do. And I told myself I wouldn't get emotional over this because it's not something that you guys can change. But I ask you to look at it as it's a special needs school and not just a singular private school. And that's why I come to you. I come to you to think about when you get to the point where you guys are voting on this year, that you think about my child, my Esther, my world. I I'd do anything, and for most of you, you don't know who she is, but she is one of the brightest little girls I've ever met in my life, and I don't say that because I'm her mother, I say that because she is. And I'd do anything. I gave up a career to be able to be at home with her so that she could have one-on-one attention, and I can take her to therapies, and I can get her to this or do this or find ways of making it work. But this is a mountain that I need some assistance with. And I know that if I came to you guys with my heart open, that you would hear it as a heart-to-heart. And I know that financially it is a big burden on us. But I feel like it's a burden that I need to share. And it's a burden that I'm asking for assistance for. So, thank you for letting me talk.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, now the next,
Mrs. Davis?
yes.
I'm hearing from our residents that they can't hear you when you speak.
Okay.
With text messages, so you can speak closer into the microphone.
All right, thank you. Okay. Yeah, that's on, this one is, okay. The next is from Mr. Michael Walker, and if you want to come forward and state your name and address, please.
Thank you, Madam President. Michael Walker, 9415 Andrew Drive, Twinsburg. I'm also here to speak about the in lieu of transportation and impracticality decision that the board is considering. I know discussion has not started on this yet, nor is a presentation, so some of my questions may be redundant and answered by the time that this issue comes up before deliberation. I noticed that in the resolution it asked to ratify a prior determination, and I'm hoping that in the discussion there will be reference to a record that this body made an impracticality determination regarding transportation as required by ORC 3327.02A as an alpha 1 through 6. This is unusual. I've looked at other districts that have had similar motions to these, and they usually follow a format that's very similar to a sample format that's actually provided in guidance from OSBA. And I'm sure you all have talked amongst each other, and maybe even had legal counsel about this, but the first determination you have to make is a student eligible for transportation, and if so, is it impractical amongst the factors? And of course, I'm sure as you're aware, if a determination is made, the parent is offered a chance to either accept the in lieu of determination or to request mediation through ODE. Reviewing previous board determinations from years 2019 and 2020, I have not seen a record of a vote, so I'm interested to see what the ratified determination is. That leads to my second point. I didn't want to bring this up, but I am a special needs parent. I have dealt through this struggle myself. One of the people who helped me very much in my struggle was Mrs. Gordon, even when I was not a resident in Twinsburg. And I'll bring up a point here because I know that it was brought up at last meeting. What is the point of discussing if you're going to bring up a topic and your colleagues berate you, question your integrity, allow members in the community to call you a racist, and do nothing while this happens? And some of the board members here, specifically you, Madam President, you, Mr. Felber, have done exactly that. There was a discussion earlier this year regarding an HVAC system. Mrs. Gordon has very extensive experience in this realm, but she was questioned on her integrity, her ability to read contracts, basically mansplained to. And when she in turn provided this board her qualifications, then she was told she was not supposed to micromanage. Because as often has been said by this board, and particularly Mr. Felber, the only job of this body is to hire a superintendent and a treasurer, and that's it. I believe was also told it's not her job to digest a contract. There are issues that are tough. Governance is tough. Sometimes governance requires someone to ask hard questions. Sometimes they may not do it in the best tone, but a good board is a board that allows that discussion. And tonight, by not breaking it out, you are lumping in a motion that probably doesn't meet the requirements of Ohio Revised Code, and lumping it in and forcing a vote on case-by-case basis transportation decisions along with other issues. And I'm sure you've been trained on policy. The rule in Ohio is transportation is the norm and the exception is rare. And I hope you'll take that into consideration and not nickel and dime on the backs of vulnerable students. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have Matt Grant.
Hello, Madam
Good
President,
evening.
Board. Thank you for allowing this forum. My name is Matt Grant. I live at 1887 Westwood here in Twinsburg. I'm here to talk about masking in schools. I'm not here to determine what everybody should do, but I want to make a point that I think people should have the option. I have with me here, it's a review of literature published in April 2021 by the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health. And I can't go through this whole thing. I don't believe you'll give me the time. But I think a lot of policy in masking has been made based on fear, based on media. And I don't feel like the science has truly been followed. And when I look at this, this is one of the newest reviews that I've been able to find. They used 45 experimental studies, 65 publications. And going through, their review confirms, and again, there's so much involved here, but they're confirming that relevant undesired medical organ and organ system phenomena accompanied by wearing masks occur in multiple fields of internal medicine, including neurology, psychology, psychiatry, gynecology, dermatology, ENT medicine, dentistry, sports medicine, sociology, occupational medicine, microbiology, epidemiology, pediatrics, environmental medicine. Those are all the areas of different disciplines that have to deal with problems associated with long-term mask use. After 30 minutes, they say that it leads to measurable physical effects with elevated transcutaneous carbon dioxide values. These changes over long-term exposure can lead to arterial sclerosis. They can lead to cognitive decline, impaired psychomotor abilities. So what they do here is they break this down into, and again, general physiological and pathophysiological issues. Then we move into neurological side effects. Wearing masks caused detectable physical adverse effects such as impaired cognition in 24% of the wearers. This was a physician study with 300 participants. Headaches in 71% of the participants, and 28% of those with headaches persisted and required medication. And what they found, they looked at 1 hour of wearing, 2 hours of wearing, and 3 hours of wearing, and found that these effects intensified over time. In this same experiment, there were significant impaired thinking, impaired concentration for all mask types, fabric, surgical, and N95s, after only 100 minutes of wearing the masks. They state the psychological effects. Wearing masks entails feelings of deprivation, freedom, loss of autonomy, self-determination, which can lead to suppressed anger, subcutaneous constant distraction, especially as the wearing of masks is mostly dictated and ordered by others. They list various dermatological effects, dental side effects. I know our daughter started getting yellowing of the teeth, and our dentist said that's from the mask wearing. Social and sociological side effects. The disruption of nonverbal communication due to the loss of facial expression recognition under the mask can increase feelings of insecurity, discouragement, numbness, as well as isolation. It could also disrupt social interaction, erasing the positive effect of smiles and laughter, but at the same time greatly increasing the likelihood of misunderstandings because of negative emotions are also evident under masks. There is so much here, and what I want the board to understand is that every parent here, regardless if they want a mask, regardless if they don't want a mask, if they give their child the shot or they don't, everybody wants the best for their children. Is that my time limit?
Yeah, give it, just finish up and,
Okay,
because I'm sorry, we still have a few more.
All right. So let me just wrap this
Sure.
up. But I'd be happy to send this to everybody on the board. I have piles and piles of more of this type of information. I want what's best for our children. Masking, according to 109 studies in this document, is not what's best for our children. The latest CDC numbers, survival rate, children under 18 in the US, all children, 99.99815% is the survival rate. Transmission is shown in here to be unaffected. Masks do not stop transmission, and in fact, they spread smaller aerolized particles of the virus. But that still doesn't, mask wearers don't increase transmission either. There's no significant difference. So that's all I had to say. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And I have Brad Matthews.
Good evening, I'm Brad Matthews,
evening.
1741 Chestnut Trail Drive in Twinsburg. And stole a lot of my thunder. So there'll be some duplicate statements here, but I just wanted to start with, I'm not here to tell the parents what to do with their child. I'm here to ask for personal choice. I'm here to ask that the school board doesn't step in and act on behalf of parents. We know what's best for our child, not you. Feel free to make all the recommendations that you want, but the burden of safety falls on we, the parents. This is America. We have freedoms. We, the parents, should have the choice on what we ask our children to do. If you do not feel it's safe for your child without a mask, make them wear a mask, whatever you feel is necessary. Do not force discomfort and additional dangers on everyone because someone else is scared. Personal choice. I'm also here on behalf of Carl and Grace Boyce, who also have a student in the district. They could not be here tonight, but they say when their child wears the mask, he struggles to breathe. And when he gets a minor cold, it extends the lifespan of that cold for months. Is it the mask that's causing the problem? Let's look at it. So let's talk a little bit about the masks and truth around it. Everyone wore a mask in 2020, and yet according to the numbers, millions got sick. Neither mask or lockdown stopped anything. If masks truly worked, why hasn't this been recommended for decades to wear for the flu and other common colds? By the way, flu deaths have disappeared mysteriously during COVID, which seems kind of odd, right? Because I think they're clumping them all in. So remember, the experts originally told us masks didn't work for this. Then they changed their tune, and later masks became critical. Why the flip-flopping? It's because it's about control, it's not about safety. The two biggest arguments I'll make today about making the mask voluntary is that the manufacturer themselves tell you on the box they do not protect you against viruses, including COVID. So let's use logic. If the people making the masks are telling you it doesn't help, why would we disagree with them? The reason they specify that on the box is because it's a federal law. In a letter dated on April 24th, 2020, the Food and Drug Administration stated that face masks must be labeled accurately and may not be labeled in a way that misrepresents the product's intended use. The letter specifies that the labeling may not state or imply that the product is intended for antiviral protection or related uses, or is for use such as infection prevention and reduction. So any EUA mandate requiring individuals to wear face masks conflicts with 21 U.S. Section 360 BBB3, which provides that the person must be informed of the option to refuse to wear the device. So it's a violation of federal law not to allow citizens to opt out. The law supersedes guidance. After these facts, if the parents still wish to mask their child, so be it. But for most of us, we know it's not protecting our kids from anything. There are other significant dangers to wearing masks. The WHO released advice on the use of masks in 2020 and stated all of these dangers. They also specified that if you are not wearing a mask properly or touching your mask a lot, it ruins the mask and should be replaced immediately. Bigger issues are the physical and mental dangers wearing the mask can lead to, which are headaches, difficulty breathing, skin lesions, depression, fatigue, inability to concentrate and learn. So, are there proper waste management practices in place in the schools to dispose of soiled masks? Are there proper training sessions for staff and students on how a mask should be worn and how to work with it? The minute any of these protocols are broke, the mask is relatively ineffective anyways. That's coming from the WHO, CDC, and manufacturers of the masks themselves. That's not my statement. That's from them. So, logically, think about this picture here. We have to use these super filter masks for all of these things, but for what they're telling us is the most dangerous virus of all time, they expect us to believe a little thin piece of cloth or a surgical mask is going to protect us from the virus. It's not possible or logical to think that that's going to work. If our child wears masks and still gets sick, does the school become responsible for those medical bills and for the treatment of our children? So, more evidence here that it adds dangers. The CO2 levels shown in studies increase 12 times the normal levels in just 3 minutes of wearing a mask. The maximum level of CO2 we should breathe is 2.2%. 12 times that level is extremely dangerous to children, and it gets more dangerous the younger the child. Our youngest children are also the least vulnerable to this virus. So why are we trying to mask them? So at this point, if you still decide to subject your child to wearing a mask in these significant dangers, that's on you, but it is child abuse and it is breaking the law. So finally, last statement, look at the people who tell us that all of us should be wearing masks, right? Lawmakers on a plane, no masks, yet they require citizens to wear them on a plane. Bill Gates walking in New York City, no mask. Fauci sitting with people at a ballgame, no mask. Why are they not wearing them? Because they know the mask does not work. If they thought that this was so dangerous, why is the border open and they're letting people in with COVID?
Thank you.
Right? Last section. What does our immune system do?
Okay, I'm
Why
sorry,
is
you
it
have about
important?
another minute. We have one other person who would like to speak.
Yep. This is
Thank
the
you.
age of child that we teach about our immune system. How can you as educators in one breath tell them about the immune system and how it works, and then in another breath say we need a piece of cloth to protect against the virus? Let's let nature do its job. Let's throw the burden of parenting and decisions of what's best for our children on the parents. My body, my choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and we have one more. Jill, I hope I say your name right. Zupan? Is that correct?
I will pass. My name is Jordan.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, thank you for speaking, and that wraps up our remonstrance portion of this meeting. And we will move on to discussion topics F. Mrs. Powers?
Thank you, Mrs. Davis. This evening, we have a couple of important topics to discuss. So I apologize for the length of this, but both topics are of importance to our families. The first topic, as soon as Mrs. Farthing returns, is a conversation about the in lieu of transportation that we have heard about this evening as well. So, Mrs. Honeycutt, perhaps you can call up the PowerPoint for me there. Thank you for pinch hitting. There you go. As the business manager for our school district, Mr. Welker oversees our functions of transportation. So I'm going to ask him to share with the board just some of the specifics regarding in lieu of transportation, including the Ohio Revised Code upon which decisions are made related to transportation in general, but in this evening's conversation, it's about in lieu of.
Thank you. So today we're going to talk a little bit about in lieu of transportation. Next, if you can. So in lieu of transportation is ruled by Ohio Revised Code Section 3327.01. It permits the Board of Education to make payment in lieu of transportation of students where it's impractical to transport a pupil by school conveyance. Generally speaking, it's usually when somebody is 30 minutes away, or if there's instances where you don't have enough students to make it practical to transport. So that's generally what the revised code states. So on the next slide, in accordance with revised code 3327.02, the Board of Education is able to determine if it's impractical to transport a student who is eligible for transportation. Annually for us, what we have done is we have had a resolution over the past several years here of voting on the approval of the bus routes. So when we approved the bus routes, those were approved on October 7th of last year. That indicates all the schools that we are transporting to and which schools we are not. So then, once those bus routes are approved, we have, if the parent, guardian, or other person in charge of the pupil accepts the offer of payment in lieu of providing transportation and providing that all the appropriate documentation and procedures have been identified in code, the board shall pay the parent, guardian in an amount that's not less than $250. And then there actually is a maximum of what we're allowed to pay as well, which is not more than the amount determined by the department as the average cost of pupil transportation for the previous school year. As we'll go through in further slides, that amount is $1,077.09. Along with that, the payment can be prorated if the time period involved is only for part of a school year. So if a student is only there for one semester, instead of the $250, it would be prorated in half to $125. So there is the ability of prorating that amount. As mentioned above, in the 2021 school year, that amount was set at $250 as the minimum amount. And then the maximum is the $1,077.09 based on last year's average cost of transportation. When looking at our neighbors, it's pretty consistent as far as what has been provided for in lieu of transportation. So just presenting that information that Aurora, Bedford, Hudson, Ardonia, and Solon all provide $250 for any student that's eligible for in lieu.
Mr. Welker, is that supposed to be 2020 to 2021?
It's supposed to be 2020 to 2021. Thank you. Coming up recently, there's been an implementation of a House bill. It's House Bill 110. It goes into effect in September 30th of this year. So the first full year of change is in 22-23. There's a little bit of gray area in 21-22, but the intention is that we start implementing it in 21-22. So in regards to those changes, the start and end times for the community schools or the parochial schools, they must be provided to the school district prior to July 1st of each year. So the first time that that's possible is in July 1st of 2022. Districts will then notify parents 30 days prior to the 22-23 school year of impracticality. A lot of this is trying to get the determination of impracticality earlier in the decision-making process to make sure that's done before school starts. And then one of the things that House Bill 110 allows is that student drop-off and pickup can be no earlier or later than 30 minutes prior to the start or end of the school day. So if a bell time is 8 o'clock, we're able to drop off as early as 7:30. If end of school day is at 3 o'clock, we're able to go as pick up as late as 3:30. We really do try not to do that, and in our latest routes, we've been trying to make sure that's congruent with how we treat our own schools, because that's really important to us that we're treating everybody equally. Another component of House Bill 110 is that regardless of whether we're in session, we need to provide transportation to the eligible community schools as well. So that is an element that we currently practice, and we would continue to practice, of course, with House Bill 110. And then the final piece of House Bill 110 is that effective September 30th of this year, upcoming school year for the 21-22 school year, the minimum in lieu of transportation reimbursement rate is set at 50% of the amount that ODE determines to be the average cost of transportation for general education students. So that's their law. Is that it's the average cost of general education transportation students for the previous school year. So again, if you remember, the cost of that was $1,077. So right now it's set at the minimum of $250. At 50%, it would be a little north of $500 if the cost of transportation stays similar to the previous school year. We won't know that average cost until after all the schools submit their data, which is at the end of this month So that just is a summary of what we've been practicing for at least the last 13 to 15 years of doing. And we would like to open that up for discussion.
Thank you.
We're discussing last year's reimbursement?
Please.
We've already paid it out, right? Last
No.
year?
No, that's what this resolution will authorize, is the amount and paying that rate out.
That's why the screen was blank with Twinsburg, because the board hasn't set the amount yet. It's usually set here at the end of the school year. So this is for the 2021 school year. Now, with the new House bill, it has to be set earlier than it has been tradition. But we have yet to set the amount so that the Treasurer's Office can reimburse the families from the 2021 school year.
So when we had this item up last year on in lieu of transportation on the meeting on June 24th, we were reimbursing from the previous year.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And that was voted at 5-0 pass. Okay.
So I'm a little confused because we didn't have an impracticality transportation vote. So how does this flow now from that? So do you do that in the beginning of the year? And what's the schedule for this year? I mean, obviously Ms. Weekly just spoke, she doesn't know what she's gonna get for this year. And she doesn't know how she's gonna pay for it.
Right, so House Bill 110 doesn't really take effect until 22-23, right? But some of the language applies beginning this September. So the board, at our next meeting, it would be our intention for the board to set the rate of, in lieu of, once we know what the average cost is, and that's the thing that we have to wait for the reporting to come in. It's just not Twinsburg, it's the average cost across the state. So once Mark and Tracy finish all of their T1 and T2 reports, like every transportation department in the state of Ohio who's a public school district, all that information is sent to the ODE, and they determine what the average cost of transporting a child will be across the state. And then what that will, that language, and tell me if I'm wrong, Chad, because this is new for me too, but what I believe that language would suggest then, whatever that rate is, the new law would say that it would be 50% of the rate, am I correct?
The minimum.
That's the minimum.
That's the
Okay.
minimum.
That's the minimum.
So we can't set the rates for next year because we don't have the data from the Department of Education to even engage in that conversation. The purpose of tonight's resolution is so that Mr. Aho can provide reimbursement to the families who were using the district's transportation. I'm sorry, we're not able to use the district's transportation and we're eligible for the in lieu of payment that usually comes in the summer at the end of a school year.
So how do parents know if they're gonna accept it or not?
So what happens is, our parents, contact Mrs. Badine. I'm pointing at Tracy, and that's not Tracy. Bonnie is our dispatcher at Transportation Department. And so there is a form that the parent will fill out, that would suggest that they are interested in the in lieu of payment. That works its way because there has to be purchase orders and whatever to be processed through Mr. Aho's office. There's actually documentation that they complete, submit to Tracy, to Bonnie, and then the paperwork is processed.
Before the
that way.
school year starts?
Yeah. Or if we have families that are moving in.
Yeah, I don't think that's happening.
Well, I think, if I misunderstood, Mrs. Weekly's, we shouldn't be talking specifics, but your family member is new to a new school, correct? Was there last year?
Was there for 2 years, 2 solid years.
Okay, I can call you tomorrow and discuss this, because I'm very uncomfortable speaking about children specifically on the mic.
Email me back. No one in the district emailed me back.
You sent me an email?
I sent you an email, I sent the district transportation department lead an email, I sent the Honeycomb an email, nobody responded to me, so what am I supposed to do?
Okay, that's unusual. So I will look into that for you, and I don't know what happened tonight, but I will find an answer for you.
And then also, it says general education, my child unfortunately does not fall in that category.
Right. So, Board of Education, as you know from correspondence I've sent to you, that when, and it's very awkward to speak about specific children and their specific cases, because I am not wanting to disrespect somebody's rights under FERPA. So I'm very hesitant to go into detail with you on the mic this evening, Mrs. Weekly. I would be happy to have a conversation with you. Mrs. Honeycutt would be happy to have a conversation. We can do it together. I don't want to explain particulars because of privacy for your child here on the mic, okay? So I can promise that we will circle back with you tomorrow for a conversation, and we'll fix whatever happened for this past year. I don't know what happened. But generally speaking, what does happen is that the parents are calling transportation, requesting transportation. Transportation doesn't occur for that family. Ms. Vadine then, in fact, calls the family back, provides a written document that explains the in lieu of transportation, and the parent submits that so that Mr. Aho can start the process of purchase order to pay the family. That's how it's supposed to work. That's how it's been working for many years. Mrs. Abbott or Mr. Desmond, anything you want to add to the conversation about how it works out of your office? And if you are, if you can go up to the microphone.
Yeah, just real quick, just, I know on top of
hold on, go up to the
On the
microphone.
mic.
Just adding on to what the superintendent said, if a parent does not want the 250, they have every right to request a mediation from ODE and send us a letter, and everything just falls through that way. So I just want to make sure that parents are aware of that option too.
Okay. Thank you. All right,
Did you have?
no, you go ahead.
No, I had two questions, and I have a question from Mrs. Gordon, a clarification, because I think you said something that has yet to be answered. First of all, question either Mrs. Powers or Mr. Desmond, in the time that you've been here in the last year, outside of tonight's remonstrance, have we had any other communications from any other parents regarding this, or any mediation requests? I don't recall in my 8 years any mediation requests.
So we are currently talking with a family who is a concern, and I'm not gonna go into
No,
detail.
I don't want details, yeah.
But that's the only one,
And the only one in the past couple of years?
as long as I've been here, sir.
Okay. And then, Mrs. Gordon, I'm not sure, you asked a question about the ORC, and I believe we did get a legal opinion regarding how these motions can be done. I'm not sure you got your question answered, so I
We just
wanna-
didn't vote in October. There was no vote by the board in October in practicality. So,
Right, because in the resolution read that they may, it's not.
Well, that's the thing, we had a legal opinion that said we don't have to have two separate votes, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
right, but we didn't vote this past year.
Right, but I'm just saying it can be coupled in the one motion tonight.
My concern with that, and this is for next year, is that if a family wants to do mediation, they have to have a determination first. And if we didn't have determination, then they couldn't have gone into mediation because there was never a vote in practicality. So for this year, I hope we change that, starting next vote, because at the end of the day, it's only fair to the families like Mrs. who potentially really needs help. Yeah, so go ahead, Mrs. Powers.
No, obviously, we want to make sure that we're following what we should in the code. And it has been, the practice here predates me, actually. We looked as far back as 2008, of handling in lieu of the way this has been done. I can tell you that when Mr. Welker came on board is when the point of the board authorizing the routes. And so for this case, when the board authorizes the routes, and that's what started in 2014, when the board authorizes the routes, you're authorizing the routes that are authorized to be transported and also authorizing those which are impractical. So if you look back at the resolution, potentially we should probably make it more clear than it is. But that is the point at which it is determined which routes are going to have a bus and which ones are not.
Yeah, it's not how I read it, but okay.
So we can obviously, learn something new every day. We can improve that too. And we will do that for the next resolution regarding in lieu of. But the point of this evening's resolution is to set an amount so that the families who've been waiting for their reimbursement can actually be paid.
And then as far as the upcoming year, will we be discussing, I think you said finance? Or no?
No, Finance Committee bounced it back to the board. It was just a topic, and
Okay.
we said it should be done at the board, at the full
Right.
board.
Okay.
So I think we're handling that part. I don't think Finance has anything further that the entire board shouldn't all be hearing.
Okay, so basically, on our item 14, we're be voting to reimburse and set the amount for the previous school year as we did last year with the vote for the year before that.
Correct.
Okay.
And in your research of all of the neighboring districts at the same amount, are they handling it the same way that we have? Are there any variations on how they've done their in lieu?
I can't answer that. When I, for example, spoke with Mr. Roberto, who's the superintendent in Aurora this morning, I merely asked him what his in lieu amount was. I didn't ask them the process that they use, so I can't answer that.
And for further assistance mediation.
Oh, there's always a mediation option.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
there hasn't been any mediation for
I just don't understand how that people can mediate if they haven't been deemed impractical. Like, how do they even know?
Well,
Are they getting the letter that says you've been deemed impractical?
I think you get requests for certain schools, right?
Well, the individuals who, whose routes are impractical are those who are eligible for the in lieu of. And on the paperwork that is issued to the families, it would explain that on it. So the parents are reading it and they sign that they're understanding. If they don't understand the definition of impracticality or how it was measured. And I can tell you, a couple of years back, when it was during the time that we were making some reductions in the spending here in the district, we tried to actually merge this was the parochial school buses, to merge the children on the bus to reduce a route by one. And, the families raised the concern about the amount of time the children were on the bus. And so we actually studied that. We took rides on the bus. We made sure that we were being fair-minded, and ultimately the additional bus was added back to the route. So transportation is a pretty complex thing, and when concerns are raised by the families, we really do look into the concerns, try to make the best decisions for the parties involved.
I guess what I'm trying to understand specifically on 2020, 2021, do the parents that are affected by this have a letter that says that this was deemed impractical and you have the right to mediation? Do they have a letter that says that?
I don't have the letter with me. I don't know what the letter specifically says. We spoke with Bonnie to make sure that the letter was issued, and it was back in the summer of last year in the fall. I don't have a copy of the letter with me.
But your question is that letter informing them of the impracticality?
It shows a
And that's what the letter.
And their right to mediation,
Right,
as is
right.
stated in ORC.
Right.
Do you happen to know, Mark?
Because to me, that's an important question on do we just go to the $250 reimbursement and then they know they have a right, or should it be something else?
Right.
I guess to that matter, what rate do you give them in that letter if we haven't had the resolution? You just reference what we've done for the last 13.
Yeah, correct. Okay.
And it's the average and the norm of all the surrounding districts, but if they're needing further assistance, they're open to contact you for mediation.
Oh, they
Correct?
don't contact us. They
I mean, they're
contact
open
the
to
Department of Education.
Contact you with questions, and
The
then
arm
they
of
can set up.
transportation,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah. Okay. Sure, you can come on up. And then state your name, please, and your address.
I am Jill Zupan, and I am from the Attention Center. I am a parent advocate. And so here's the bigger question, okay? If it's impractical for one of your vehicles to transport a child, I think the question is, do you support an outside entity that provides this transportation to a special needs child? And are you at all providing transportation to the school in question here is Julie Billiard? You know, do you already have somebody? I see there's a list of 3 kids that are on there, what you're doing now. So really what might be impractical is for your transportation department to say, yes, we have buses that can go there.
Mm-hmm.
That may not be practical. That may be the impractical thing. So I guess what Jordan is concerned with is that school starts soon. I love, it starts soon. And she needs to get Esther to Julie Billiard because she has already gone through her due process with the school. She has been deemed, and she supports a category of autism. She supports the needs that she needs, and that it was also agreed upon, or it has been determined by the parents, that she gave this school a fair chance, 2 years to support, where she doesn't mean that she wouldn't return. Now, she's a resident here. She supports taxes that pay for this school. So there's, she's here as a resident. So the question is that since they felt during this most important developmental time for any autistic individual that she gets the help that she needs, how do we get her from her Twinsburg residence to Julie Billiard when she can't afford to do it? Does she just throw up her hands and say, because she doesn't have the money to start the process and hope for reimbursement, okay? There needs to be a plan in place. And like I said, it may not be practical. You might not have the vehicles yourself. Now, I've worked with other schools, and I've worked with other children that are on John Peterson grant or the autism spectrum, especially in my practice, and we have been able to get schools to support an outside entity that transport these kids. I've seen it done, where the school districts have. Now, I've never worked with Twinsburg to do that, but now we have Jordan Wheatley here doing it for Esther. So the question is, we need to do this. I welcome that conversation that I think the three of us need to have, and her husband, if he's available, that we have this conversation, because the clock is ticking. What is she going to do? Is Esther going to sit at home waiting for a board decision?
Can you offer the names of other school districts that are providing that kind of?
I can talk to you about that when I talk to you, because I'll
I
make
would
sure
be
I have my
curious.
ducks in a row.
I'm sorry?
I'll make sure that I have all my ducks in the row and I have my facts on that, so that
Okay, because I would be curious, given your reference to John Peterson and the Autism Scholarship, there are certain things related to that. So I'm curious as to how that is happening. So
Yeah.
we can have a conversation off the mic, but you said something that I'm wondering about. And so if you can provide for us the names of other school districts who are doing what you're suggesting, Mrs. Honeycutt and I can do some research and see what's going on in other places, obviously.
Right,
But
I think
when a
that-
parent accepts a John Peterson scholarship or an autism scholarship, the rules of the game somewhat change.
I know.
And so it is not the same as a child who makes the decision to take their child, decides to take their child to another chartered non-public school. And so we just have to be careful. This is a very complicated conversation, and on the front end, it looks like a simple answer, but it really is not. And so I would appreciate a conversation with you and Mr. and Mrs. Weekly and Mrs. Honeycutt and myself, that we can really delve deeper into this conversation, into the facts of the matter, and understand clearly what you're suggesting. And if it's something that we can do, we will certainly bring that forward to the board. I just don't know if what you're suggesting is doable, and I need more information.
Yeah, I believe the bottom line is exactly what it is that they're actually funding it. They're funding it, however, I know they're not under any obligation to do that. I know that, but it's not like we could bring Esther back and say, because the bottom line is, if Esther can't show up on the first day of school at Julie Billiard, then she's by law expected to be somewhere. Okay, she has to be here. Then what's gonna change in Twinsburg that's going to help Esther that hasn't already taken place in these 2 years that she's been here already? So if that worked, they wouldn't be going to Julie Billiard. You know, it was the attention center that was behind saying, this child needs to be moved out of that district because she's losing time. She's got a developmental window that's between the ages of 6 and 11 that are critical with autism. And so it's just not happening here. So it's kind of like, what do we do on the first day of school when Esther's still sitting at home and there's no form of transportation to get her there? You know, I can't drive her, I go take her every day, you can't come and get her and do that. So I think the bottom line is the school willing to support the cost or a shared amount, but it can't be $250 with a max of $1,000 over a period of time, and 50%, whatever this PowerPoint is trying to tell us. It needs to be significant. It needs to be something significant. Or what else do you got? Because I'm sure that you would love to have Esther back to your school. You know, the John Peterson, the autism grant money that the school could be getting is not going to Julie Billiard. Okay, and so you guys have forfeited that amount of money. An IEP has funds tied to it. And so you're not getting that from the state. Julie Billiard's getting it. But we can bring that money back. But what do you got? And so, it's complicated for us too here. So that's just it. But like I'm saying is that I don't want you guys coming back saying we don't have enough buses that go that way. And here's a check that you'll get in a year or two to reimburse. It's just not enough. We may not count on these buses because probably you don't. But there are companies that will come and pick up Esther safely and transport her. They know how to deal with these children, what have you. And that's what she's working hard on doing, so,
Thank you.
okay?
We'll call Mrs. Weekly tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think to answer a couple of the questions, the form does have an offer for mediation, so if you reject the offer, there's a section that states that you can go for mediation. And then secondly, the amount is referred to in the memo that what the previous year was determined. So that's, I think that
So are they
answers
getting
the
it
two
a year
questions.
later, though? So for instance, in Ms. Weekly's case, she wouldn't get that letter until next spring, or the summer.
So you get the letter in the summer prior to the school year, so summer of the 2021 school year is when you should be getting that letter. Is that correct?
So if you've
But
been
that
on
would be
for-
for 2020, because the impracticality vote's happening.
So the piece of the impracticality vote is that we're saying that the bus routes, when they were approved on October 7th of this past year, that was voted on, and that's.
Are we calling that the impracticality vote?
So basically, that's where Superintendent Powers was stating that next year what we can do is make that more definitive. But with that, that's the practice that has been done for several years.
All right, so there's going to be more clarification, and it sounds like you're open to.
Absolutely. For the 21-22 school year, we want to approve bus routes even earlier. Our intention is to try to bring that to the next board meeting. And then we're working through the language of what to do for the determination of impracticality, because it is before September 30th. Our intention is to do something related to that. We do know that the amount's not going to be set for a while here, so we're trying to sort our way through the new House bill.
Okay. All right. Do we have any more comments on that as of now? Okay, did you want to move on to district reopening plan?
Well, before we get to that, and I don't know where it's appropriate on the agenda, as you noticed from the slides and also on the resolution for this evening, there is not a dollar amount set. I was feeling, I didn't feel like I should have forced the number in there without this conversation. So the board will have to amend the resolution to be inclusive of a dollar amount. Otherwise, Mr. Aho will not know what to reimburse the families for. So I just don't want to forget that. You can do that at that point of the agenda, Mrs. Davis, but that's something that we seek for this evening so that we can actually reimburse the families who are waiting for those dollars.
Okay, so would you suggest, or anyone suggest, doing that in the discussion portion?
I mean, we're discussing it now.
Yeah.
Let's just stay with it. We can
Sure.
always amend, we can amend it then, we can amend it now. But,
Okay.
I mean, while we're on the topic, let's stay with it.
Okay, and this is the same thing that we voted on last year, right around, I guess, about the same time. Kind of in relation to what other schools are doing, what we're able to do, what we're permitted to do. All right, so any suggestions?
Mr. Aho, where do you suggest that a dollar amount goes in the resolution? I would suggest that it resolves to approve in lieu of transportation payment in the amount of whatever for 66 students?
Correct.
Do my colleagues have an opinion on an amount? No one at all?
Yeah, I'm not sure as I read ORC, what is it, 337702, I'm not sure we're following the statutory requirements, so I'm gonna not have an opinion on this one.
And we still have it in front of us. If we don't change this resolution, they don't get paid. precedents has said $250. We can change that amount, we can put the same amount in, but we have to put something in, otherwise the parents that have been waiting get nothing until an amount is put in a resolution and Mr. Ahoz has something he's approved to pay. So if they've been waiting, I assume, let's get through, you know, that discussion and put an amount in here so they can be paid.
Now, we had any, because I haven't seen any communication, have we had any, communication from other parents regarding this from last year?
So in speaking with the transportation staff, the only questions that have come forth have to do, two categories. The one is the parent who is concerned about the payment in general and wishes to file a mediation. The second concern from multiple parents was a misunderstanding from high school students. Some parents whose children go to Walsh were still seeking the in lieu of, even though the board last year took action not to transport any high school students, ours or otherwise. And so they misunderstood that they were not eligible for the in lieu of at the high school level because we didn't transport any high school students because of the pandemic. So Mr. Desmond and Mrs. Abbott have been addressing those calls as they've come in, and I think that they understand the situation now. They were just confused because in years past they were eligible. They didn't understand why they weren't eligible last year. It was because we did not transport any high school students.
Okay. And of these schools who were being we were providing transportation from, were they in attendance? I just, out of curiosity, were most of them in attendance daily? Because I know even some of the parochial schools and some of the private schools were doing virtual learning.
I honestly don't know that answer, so I don't know if either of you. So I'm sorry, I don't know that answer.
All right.
Well, I'm gonna start a discussion on the amount since nobody else will.
Okay.
I mean, if we're looking at House Bill, was it 110, and they're gonna say 50% of whatever that number is, assuming it's close to 1,077. If we do the 250 that we've always done, that's 16,500. And I don't know each individual case on these students or why they chose these schools, if for reasons and what have you. If we were to double that amount to 500, that's $33,000. Neither which amount is gonna break our budget. You know, so if I entertain a discussion on the amount since nobody else is.
Okay.
Does anybody have an opinion on raising it?
I think that's fine. You're gonna raise the amount?
I mean, we're gonna, at the minimum, we're gonna be raising it next year, you know.
Will be that,
yeah.
50%.
Right.
Okay.
So can you just explain how you get to the price, like, of the cost? Like, can you break the how does that broken down?
So the amount is not actually determined by us, it's determined by the ODE once we submit all of the reports. Then they calculate what the average cost of transporting a general education child is in our school district. And so for an average child, I think it's $1,077. So to go to Mr. Felber's point, I think is what you're saying is since the state law is moving us to at least 50%, beginning with the 21-22 school year, you're suggesting that we would do that now.
I'm just, because nobody else is coming up with the amount, we either stay the same, increase it, we're gonna have a completely different discussion once the numbers come out. It's probably gonna be pretty close to the average, cause I can't imagine it changing dramatically with all these districts' data year after year. But
It's hard to say
all
if
of our
there's impact to
district-
COVID on that for next year.
Yeah, I mean, our
That
district,
part's hard to
our
say.
district colleagues around, you know, neighboring, which we're always compared to, they're all at the same amount. I believe that's the minimum amount at the state, and, you know.
Yeah, the number of, like, essentially, over the past, several years, it's been 250 is the minimum amount, and then the max you're allowed to go to is the average cost of pupil transportation. So it's had a range of 250 to somewhere around 1,000, depending on the year.
So it's 1,000 per student?
Per student, correct.
That's what they determine is what it costs to transport a student. They're taking all the data from all the districts. That's why it takes a while, because the ODE has to get that data, and then they calculate it and come up with that number and give it to us.
And how do we come up with the 250
The
per?
250 is set by the ODE. That's the minimum amount allowed by, that they have declared. And again, the local data is saying that nobody else is going above that. That doesn't mean that's right or wrong. We're just saying, the fact is that every other district is at 250. Now, the House Bill 110, I think, is trying to impact not only amount, but Mrs. Gordon's, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but they're trying to get that decision made earlier, to help the parents. Seems to be what House Bill 110 is trying to do.
Well, the way I read the current, language, I just don't believe the process or the resolution as written, we are meeting the statutory requirements of 332702, so I don't have an opinion on this.
And then the requirements, or what she's referring to, I think the keywords, don't they say may? And it's not an absolute, it's not that if you haven't, done as she suggested that you're not following procedure because it's of that, I guess that one little word.
Well, I guess my counter to that, Mrs. Davis, is that we have had the routes approved, authorized every fall since Mr. Welker's been here.
Right.
So, although the resolution may not have the particulars that maybe we should include, the routes have all been authorized.
Okay.
And so when we were working through this over the last couple weeks, we've sought the opinion of legal counsel. And so what you see this evening, with the addition of the amounts inserted, have met the standard as offered by legal counsel. So I think we're doing what we're supposed to by the code. Obviously, for next year, things are changing, so things will look differently for next school year.
Okay.
So with any financial payment, Mr. Aho, you have to certify it, whether it be a contract with a union or whatever, you have to, this amount is obviously substantially less than a union contract. But whether we were at 16.5 or 33,000, in your opinion, we could support that.
Sure.
Okay. I knew the answer,
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
I just wanted to make sure we heard it from you that, well, we're headed this direction anyway, so
Well,
I'm just gonna
in light
put it
of-
out there that
yeah.
we move the amount. Since nobody's given me any feedback
Well-
whatsoever, I'm gonna say move it to 500 for now.
I
Even
would-
though this is in the past, we're paying parents from last year, let's increase the amount.
And on top
maybe
of
we'll
it-
get our other district neighbors to look at it differently. I know that's nowhere near the situation that, the parent brought up today. I know that's nowhere near that amount. But it's a difference between 33,000 or 396,000. If these were the same amount of students at that rate, that's a significant difference between 33,000 and 400,000.
Yeah, and I'm just very general in light of everything that's, over the past year, that what families have had to deal with, I would be in favor of following suit, and, we're heading in that direction.
Right.
That's where we're gonna be going. I think it's a reasonable amount.
And I'll put it out there in public record, Finance Committee is discussing and concerned about the trend of the district finances. We've had a financial flow chart and a plan for 10+ years that has indicated where we'd be in 22, 23. And we are there. You're gonna hear a lot more about that. We're gonna have a full board work session. This amount isn't gonna make or break
Right.
that. But finances, there are some concerns, and Mr. Aho's done his statutory duties in informing us of where we're at. So I'm just putting that out there. This amount is not gonna impact that one way or the other, but I'll just put it out there, I'm open to the 500 if we at least start there, because that's gonna at least be close to where we're gonna be minimally next year.
Right.
So we might as well start budgeting it and be comfortable with it now.
I think that's a good start. What do you think, Angie?
So when we get to that motion, we can amend it. We can amend it now, but I know you have other administrative reports yet.
So why don't we finish it? If the
Okay.
board is making an adjustment, I respectfully request that let's put a bow on this so that we can move on with the agenda.
Yes. And so as far as 14
Mr. Hill, can we amend something that hasn't been
It doesn't.
read yet? Normally, you have a motion read, and then
Right.
if there's a request for an amendment, it's made to the person that's made the motion. I'm just not sure procedurally if we can amend something until it's been brought up.
Yeah, I think we need to wait till it's brought up in discussion.
Before we vote, after,
Right.
during
Yeah.
discussion.
But I think we vetted if nobody else is arguing, we vetted as much discussion as we possibly can have. Unless somebody has anything else to do on this topic, we can talk it again legally under the discussion part of the motion, but we can't amend it until it's been read.
Until it's been read. Okay,
That make sense?
all right. Correct. So we will read through those items, and before we have our vote, we'll have discussion, and then that's where we will amend it. Correct?
No, we have to have the motions, made and seconded.
Right, and then discussion.
And then it has to be amended at that point.
Right. But not at this time, this is just discussion topics, so when we get to that. Okay, so we'll take care of that when we read those items. So as far as, what is next, and that would be.
Mrs. Davis, if I might ask,
Yes.
for the board's consideration, we have students presenting this evening about the portrait of a graduate.
Oh.
And I know this next conversation is going to take us deep after 9 o'clock. Would the board be open to allowing the portrait of a graduate, presentation to be made now?
I definitely would. I
So that
missed it.
Neela and Daniel and Mrs. Cruz can present, because they've been members of this committee, dedicated, and they've been so patient with us. I apologize for
I
the
just thought
long
they
meeting.
were fascinated with the inner workings.
Right.
Neela and Daniel probably are.
So what do we have to do to change that order?
I don't know if you have to do anything particular, or just
Okay.
putting one presentation
Yeah,
in
it's
front of
just
the next.
administrative,
There's no
so-
board action on this,
Yeah,
but
yeah, we're
if you don't
administrative.
mind,
No, we would definitely welcome
I
that,
feel
and I'm
bad
sure
that it's
you
summer
are
break
definitely
and the kids
ready
are
for
here
that.
being so patient. I apologize for that. So, Board of Education, thank you for allowing us to do a little detour. As you know, from the strategic plan, one of the action items that was to be completed before the beginning of the 21-22 school year was the creation of a portrait of a graduate. And the board authorized a contract with Battelle for Kids, and we were very grateful to work under the facilitation of Mr. Stephen Fuji from Battelle for Kids. And we've worked through the process, and this evening, Mrs. Farthing will explain a little bit about the process, but we wanted you to hear from members of the committee about the work that happened that will ultimately lead to this beautiful portrait of a graduate that we hope you authorize this evening as part of the agenda. So I'm going to turn this over to Mrs. Farthing so that she can get us back on track here with the portrait. And Neela and Daniel and Mrs. Cruz, thank you for being here this evening.
Come on up. Good evening, Board of Education. Thank you very much for allowing this adjustment in the schedule. I think we all very much appreciate it. I'd like to thank, as Mrs. Powers said, our guests for being here this evening. Neela O'Hara is an incoming 7th grader. Daniel is an incoming 8th grader. And Mrs. Cruz, what grade are you going to? Okay. I know this graphic is familiar to you. It is our strategic plan kind of outline graph. And as part of the 21st Century Teaching and Learning, we talked about this portrait of a graduate, and we tried to create one ourselves on our committee, and that didn't go as well as we had hoped, and so that's how we worked with Battelle for Kids. So what I'd like to do is to get a little student perspective. We had students joining us on our committee from, I think Neela, were you our youngest? Yeah. Yes, Neela was our youngest student, and then we had some others. And then, as we talked about before, that our committee had also someone all the way ranging up to 92. So we had quite the gamut of members of the community and stakeholders with us. But come on up here, Neela. All right, the question we're going to ask Neela is, could you describe the process of the portrait of a graduate?
Thank you. The creation of the portrait of a graduate was made by many different groups, including business leaders in our community, Twinsburg administration, staff, students, and parents. We discussed what we believe are the characteristics of our future Twinsburg graduates and how we can help them reach their goals.
All right, Can you tell us what you learned during this process?
Reflecting on the process of creating this portrait, I learned that my role was significant because I was able to contribute my opinion as a student that could also reflect other students' views. If the portrait was solely made by teachers, parents, and other adults, students would not be able to easily relate and be interested in the portrait. That's what I learned throughout this process of creating the portrait of a graduate.
Why don't you stay up here? Come on back up. And then Daniel, as part of that, what are your hopes for future Twinsburg City School District learners?
My hope for future students is for them to be able to look at the portrait and see themselves in later years as the successful graduate. The members of the Portrait of a Graduate team have created this pathway for students to help guide them to be ready for life's challenges. As they go through their education and leave Twinsburg High School, they should be able to take their skills and knowledge and use it later in life, not just at Twinsburg, but anywhere they may be taken by their future.
Why don't you wait right here? Come on up, Daniel. Same question. What are your hopes for future Twinsburg City School District learners?
My hopes for future Twinsburg learners would be that no matter their walks of life, their voices will be heard, and that each and every one of them will take advantage of the incredible opportunity that the Twinsburg City School District has to offer.
I'm gonna,
Don't leave yet, in case the board has any questions.
you guys did
All right,
a really good job.
Mrs. Cruz, we invited Mrs. Cruz here because she had a unique perspective, being that she was with us from the ground floor with the 21st Century Teaching and Learning, and then she was a member of the committee as well. So can you just talk to the board about the process?
My perspective as a
Your
parent?
perspective,
Yes.
that's it, yes.
So thank you for allowing me to be here today. I guess if I reflect on my perspective as a parent and being a part of the strategic planning process as well as the Portrait of a Graduate, I guess the word that comes to mind is inclusive. You heard from Neela and Daniel just the different perspectives that were brought to the table. You had parents, you had educators, you had our students from the district talking about their hopes and goals and what that means to what that should look like within the district. So I was just so energized and excited to be a part of that. I am the parent of a graduate as well as two twins. So twins that are 13 and going into the 8th grade. And we've been in the district since they were preschool through now, and have just always had such a remarkable respect for the district and the educators, and to be able to share my thoughts of what I hope and dream for my children to be able to experience as a part of the district is meaningful. And so I just commend the district allowing to facilitate that process and allow parents, educators, and students to come together to share and with a common goal. And I think even as we talk about some of the topics that we're talking about here today, you know, the common goal is really the safety of our students, that we are making sure that they are in an environment where they can continue to develop and meet their full potential, whatever that may be. And I think that is so important and really should be core to what we consider to be the Portrait of a Graduate. I was also just want to mention, I was so impressed by the students. Neela was in one of the groups that I was in, and Daniel. It just gave me such hope and energy of, you know, what the future holds. And when we think about what our graduates will be able to accomplish, you know, as we look to them in the future, this gives me a lot of hope. Just when you heard them speak today, I would just commend their parents, and am excited about what they will do in the future. So I just want to thank you for that, and if you have any questions, let me know.
I don't have any questions, but I just want to comment how well spoken you two are for being so young. I mean, I mean, going into 7th grade and what you're going into 8th grade. And I mean, even us up here sometimes struggle with things we want to express, and you hear the ums and the likes and awkward moments, but you two did a really great job, and it takes a lot of courage to stand up in front of us. And thank you for your patience.
Mrs. Davis, this was all done virtually, obviously last school year and into the summer until June, I guess. But what was most interesting is that the students on the committee were put into these virtual rooms with everybody else who was part of the committee. And the feedback that they provided, they were great speakers on behalf of their peers. They have great opinions and great things to say, and they really impressed the adults on the committee. And we had, Dean Spalsbury from Kent State was with us. We had local business owners. We had Chief Noga was on our committee. Assistant Chief Basso was on the committee. And so members of the community who hold established positions. And it was a proud moment for me because we were able to peek inside the rooms, Mrs. Farthing, Mr. Fuji, and I. And when you heard the students in particular engaging in conversations that were important to them and holding their own in these conversations, it was really a great thing to see. So proud of both of you and the rest of the students that were on the committee, and thank you very much for being here this evening. And now we get to see what this actually looks like.
And now the unveiling. This is our portrait of a graduate. This is just the graphic part, and you will see that we have a student, so in my mind, I think of a Wilcox Tiger above the open-minded. Moving our way through, then we probably have a middle schooler student with their backpack, and then we have a student who is graduating. At the end of the path of a Twinsburg City School student, our goal for them is that everyone is enrolled, enlisted, or employed. And then you'll see that under each of the colors, under the steps, we have open-minded, collaborative, agile, engaged, and globally aware. So as we worked through the process, the committee came up with those terms that's what we wanted to see our Twinsburg Tigers to be. This is, those are the descriptions of each of the categories with a little more about open-minded, collaborative, agile, engaged, and globally aware. And then here is the unveiling of the full portrait of a graduate. We're very excited about it, and I'm going to point out one of the big things that we changed about it. If you look from the blue to the green to the orange to the red, one of our first iterations had larger steps, and we didn't want anyone to think that a Wilcox Tiger was more important than an R.B. Chamberlain Tiger or a Twinsburg High School Tiger, so that's when we made the steps adjusted a little bit. We adjusted wording as we went. But little changes. Working with Battelle was fantastic. As I said, we tried this in our committee, and we didn't get as far as we had hoped. But this we really like. And one of my thoughts is that this would go on the back of the profile of the Twinsburg High School document that the students can send to their colleges. And this would be our hopes that this is what our Twinsburg Tigers will look like as they graduate from the Twinsburg City School District.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Any questions for our committee members?
I'm sorry?
Any questions
Does
for the
anybody
committee
have any
members?
questions?
Thank you for all the work.
Okay.
Great job.
No. It was a great team effort, and I think Battelle being able to facilitate for us, being someone from the outside, and just all of the stakeholders, it just made such a nice difference. So.
And I see leadership roles coming up with you too.
I do too. I'm not sure if Neela's going to say yes to another board meeting, though, since this is her second one with a big agenda. But what a meeting to attend. So, okay, thank you so much, and thank you for allowing us to swap to the beginning.
And thanks to
Definitely.
Mrs. Cruz, too. She represents all of the parents that were on the committee, but so dedicated to her family and also to our school district. And thank you for always stepping up when we need a committee member or opinion, advice on something. You're really a true partner with our school district, so we thank you too, Mrs. Cruz.
Thank you. And that's your cue, you guys. Go home, enjoy last few minutes of daylight. Thank you. All right.
Thank you for letting us do that. Really
Definitely.
impressed with that work, and you'll find the actual resolution at the later part of the agenda this evening.
Okay, thanks.
Board of Education, the next part of the discussion, agenda item, revisits the district reopening plan. As you know, back in June, we presented and the board authorized our initial plan, and so much has happened since since that time with regard to COVID variant and all kinds of things that we're paying attention to. In addition to that, we knew that when we launched the parent declaration survey, that we were also seeking the opinions of our families with regard to the reopening of the school year, with regard to declaring their intention as to on-campus versus some kind of online option for their children. And also just minor things like, you know, do you want your back-to-school mailer in the USPS or online or however. So this survey was very long and also offered us a lot of feedback from our families. So of course, the first goal and the only goal that we have here is to ensure that the school year will bring a health and safe environment for our students, for our staff members, and for all of their families as well. So I'll take you through some of the data that we were able to collect from the Parent Declaration Survey, and the first talks about the school options. Apologize, the numbers are small, but what you can see, board, is that we had 2,673 declarations for on-campus education. We had 60 declarations for the virtual option. And as you know, since the declaration survey came out, there is now legislative language that would support the district partnering with Ohio Online Learning. And it has become somewhat complicated, as I wrote to you last Thursday. When we were working under last school year with our virtual option, we just offered the virtual option. But now there's legislative language, and this virtual option will actually have its own IRN number, and there's additional things that the district has to do now to set up for the online option, even though it's going through Ohio Online Learning. And then we had about 1,300 parents who didn't respond, and in my correspondence with families earlier in the summer, we indicated that if you didn't declare an option, we're making the determination that the family is satisfied with on campus. And so taking those numbers together, it would appear that we have about 98.5% of our student population, about 4,300 kids, who will be on campus with us starting in a few weeks. And then about 1.5% of our families desired the virtual option. What has happened since that point in time, thanks to the direction provided to the board with the eligibility criteria, because we were somewhat concerned about some students who were having difficulty in the virtual realm, is that the building principals have all taken the students who are assigned to their buildings based on the parents who are wishing for an online option, and have worked through rubrics to determine whether or not the student is eligible for that virtual option. There are some students whose parents have determined that they would like their child to be in the online option, but when we take a look at especially attendance and grades of last year, the principals are now engaging those parents in conversations about the better option would be on campus. So obviously if there's a health issue, if we have an autoimmune issue, if parents have other concerns, they are engaging with our principals, and we'll finalize the numbers of kids for the online piece here in the next week or so. But that was the data I wanted to make sure that you had, and that we were talking about it this evening. Any questions about the initial?
I'm only curious about the 1,300 that didn't answer. That's pretty low. That was low response rates versus what we've seen. So, any idea?
I don't know. We sent several reminders out to ask parents to make sure that they responded. It could just be that the parents were satisfied and didn't want to respond if they knew that the fallback would be that their child would be registered for on campus. I don't have an answer.
We've been having these surveys throughout the year. So that would be my assumption as well, because if they had a strong opinion about not attending, I would think that they would want to express that.
Yes, I would imagine that is the case. I really think that our families are excited, and the kids are too, about getting back to their grade band campuses. They've missed being on campus, so. So the next slides will talk about the facial coverings and the initial recommendations that the board supported in our initial plan. And the first talks about our young students, students that are younger than the age of 12 and who are currently not vaccinated. The plan initially said here that the masks would be required for students younger than the age of 12 with the exception of preschool, because we know for some of our preschoolers that is very much a difficult thing to ask them to do. And so masks would be strongly recommended for preschool students to wear while they're on campus. And then the next recommendation was that our staff members who teach or supervise students who are younger than 12 years of age would also be required to wear the masks. And then students younger than 12 years of age who are not engaged in class activities, but if they're doing PE class or if they're outside at recess, that those actively engaging activities where they're running around, they would not be required to wear their masks in those circumstances. The next recommendation talked about the fact that we know that we have 6 classes of 6th graders who are being scheduled over to the RBC campus upstairs north. And so we wanted to ensure that there was language to support the fact that in those classrooms, actually not only there, but also on Dodge's campus, that there may be students where there's a mixture of 11 and 12-year-olds. And in those circumstances, the initial plan would suggest that all students would wear the masks, and that would be a 6th grade classroom probably, unless the kids were engaging in physical activities. The next recommendation talked about students ages 12 to 18, and we know that we have students who have been vaccinated, and we have students who have been vaccinated over the summer months. I think I mentioned it later in the presentation here, but we have an additional 60 students whose parents have now indicated in last week's survey that they seek the vaccination. So Dr. Walker has been working with Discount Drug Mart to try to get a date to work for everybody, and we'll hopefully have that information out to those family members of those 60 students and get the kids vaccinated here in the month of August. And then finally, for the high school and middle school kids over the age of 12, the suggestion that was authorized in the initial plans would suggest that students who are unvaccinated would wear masks to school as middle school and high school students who are over the age of 12. And then with regard to the staff members who support those students, we were also suggesting that they would not be required to wear masks while working with the students in that school unless working with medically fragile students. We have a number of special education classrooms where it's hand-over-hand instruction, and in those cases, we're suggesting that our special educators and the assistants that work with our students with disabilities who are most medically fragile would be required to wear the masks when they're working in that close proximity with the children. And also for our unvaccinated staff members, it was recommended that they would be continuing to wear their masks to school. So the next slide actually talks about the feedback that we received from the families about that plan. And the question just basically reiterates what I just shared with you about students who are older than 12 years of age, and that the district would recommend the mask wearing. You can see that of the population of families that responded, 78% basically agreed with that plan, and 22% of the respondents did not agree with the plan. And the next question talks about the younger children, younger than the age of 12, and of course that's the grade band from 11 on down to kindergarten, that we, in the initial plan, were requiring students to be masked with the exception of our preschool children. And 74% of the families who responded were in agreement with that plan, with 26% in disagreement with the plan. So I find that information interesting. So Board of Education, as you know, I've been very close to this conversation since day one, and had conversations just this afternoon with our health commissioner and superintendent groups in Summit County. But one of the things that I wanted to check on is we have parents in our school community who are medical doctors, or who have the degree of a nurse at the level of an MD. And so I sent an inquiry to them, and my question, I'll read it because it was the same question for every family or every doctor. It said, as a medical professional, I know that you have been following the COVID-19 pandemic closely. I'm sending this email with a request for your thoughts regarding the ongoing debate about unvaccinated students and whether they should be required to wear masks in school. Last year, students and staff members were mandated to wear masks while in school. However, this year finds school superintendents with the duty of making this decision. I'm not a medical professional, nor am I a scientist, thus I feel unprepared to make this decision without reaching out to professionals such as you to provide guidance on this topic. As a tiger parent, you have a vested interest in this decision. And so I'm going to read the answers that I received from, I believe, 4 of the parents that I corresponded with. And the first here is from Dr. Amy Snyderman. And Dr. Snyderman writes, "There is no doubt in my mind that unvaccinated students should be masked at school. We are seeing COVID positive cases in children on a daily basis, and it is likely to get significantly more common in the coming weeks as the Delta variant continues to circulate. As you may know, the Delta variant is at least 3 to 4 times more contagious than other variants. There are more breakthrough cases in vaccinated people with this variant, and unlike other variants, Delta can be passed from a vaccinated person to others. This is why the CDC has started to recommend that even vaccinated people wear masks indoors. The safest thing to do would be for all students and staff, including those who are vaccinated, to wear masks while indoors, at least until this next wave starts to wane. And it is really just starting here in Ohio. I believe having everyone masked would help keep students in school and reduce the amount of quarantining. I know that would not be popular with many families, but again, it would be the safest to protect everyone since even vaccinated people are at risk. Another reason to support masking is that other respiratory viruses are at high risk levels right now, particularly RSV, respiratory syncytial virus, I apologize. RSV can present as just a moderate cold in adults and children and be more dangerous in young babies. The current levels in the last few weeks are similar to what we would see in the middle of winter, and it's usually never seen this time of the year. Students who contract this virus will likely need to stay out of school while they are tested. So keeping this virus transmission low would be ideal. Masking will help keep this and other respiratory viruses more limited. So that's from Dr. Amy Snyderman. The next response I received was from Dr. Jennifer Mullyo. She writes, "Thanks for reaching out. As an internist and mother of 2 children who got the vaccine as soon as it was available for their age group, vaccination is the most important strategy in combating this pandemic. In a perfect world, all children 12 to 18 years of age should be vaccinated by now, and as a school system, we should continue to advocate and make it available. The latest guidance from CDC suggests that masks should be worn indoors by all individuals aged 2 and older who are not fully vaccinated. Consistent and correct masks used by people who are not fully vaccinated is especially important indoors and in crowded settings when physical distancing cannot be maintained. Many schools serve children under the age of 12 who are not eligible for vaccination at this time. Therefore, this guidance emphasizes implementing layered prevention strategies, e.g. using multiple prevention strategies together consistently to protect people who are not fully vaccinated, including students, teachers, staff, and other members of the households. I fully advocate above guidance for schools, especially wearing masks for unvaccinated children." And then she just continues to say, "There is not a need to wear masks outdoors, and we should continue to advocate hand washing and 3-foot social distancing." It's our second doctor. The third doctor is Dr. Emily McClung, and I apologize, she's not a doctor, she has a PhD in nursing. She says, "Although I'm not a physician, I have a PhD in nursing. However, I do have thoughts about the next school year. I absolutely believe all unvaccinated individuals, staff, and students should wear masks while in school and on the bus, as well as participating in extracurricular events. Honestly, I think all individuals, regardless of vaccination status, should be wearing them. Our daughter works at a local restaurant, and we have made her wear her mask at work, even though she is vaccinated. We have started wearing ours in public again, too." And then the last statement is from, Dr. Erin Jeffers. "In terms of masks, my medical opinion is that the decision has really already been made for you. The CDC now recommends that everyone within the schools wear masks regardless of vaccination status. The American Academy of Pediatrics, an organization of 67,000 pediatricians, shares the same recommendation. They have the same objective as of you, and that's keeping kids safe. Without required masks in our schools, I fear that this new Delta variant will spread like wildfire like it has in other communities already, even affecting vaccinated individuals. We can help prevent that within our Tiger family by mandating masks within the schools, even mandating it for those who already are vaccinated. And then she gave me the link to the AAP's recommendation. She writes, I know that you are getting lots of pushback on mask requirements, but we need to think about the safety of our little tigers in addition to the overall safety of our community. If we are not diligent about wearing masks now, we will suffer the consequences of many more affected by COVID. So those were the responses from our parents who are in the medical profession that responded to me. And then the last document I have here is actually from the Ohio Education Association. That's the union under which our classified and certificated staff members affiliate. And that statement comes from the president of OEA, Scott DeMoro. He says, educators want nothing more than to return to full in-person instruction this fall. But we want to make sure that when we do so safely for our kids and communities. OEA urges communities and school districts to use every tool at their disposal to ensure the safe return to in-person instruction this fall. The recent spike in COVID infections driven by the highly infectious Delta variant is especially concerning because the variant is more deadly to students and a youth vaccine has not yet been approved for students younger than 12. This means that most students will remain unvaccinated for at least the first half of the coming school year. The science is clear that masking, appropriate ventilation, social distancing, hand washing, and vaccinations all in combination is the best way to keep students, families, and educators safe and keep community transmission rates low. Local decisions about mask wearing need to be made based on science and not politics, DeMoro said. These decisions should be made solely in the best interest of protecting the health of educators, students, and their families. The best way to ensure a safe return to in-person learning this fall is to follow the science and listen to the medical experts. We can't let politicians substitute their political ambitions for public safety when our kids' health and safety are at risk.
Mrs. Powers, there's some misinformation in there. I would like to ask you how many students, how many children from 18 and under in Summit County went to the hospital this past year? Do you know? Because I know.
I don't have that here tonight. I can tell you
It's
that.
in Summit County Department of Health. I'll print it off and send it to you. 1.9% of those kids went to the hospital. Just the hospital. 0% went ICU. There are 0 deaths. They are saying that there's an uptick in this, and there is not. Go check the numbers as of today. We have proven the masks don't work. It says on the box the masks don't work. You touched your mask at least 20 times.
I'm going to politely request that any discussion like that would be reserved for remonstrance because we do have to continue on with our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Davis. So the point here is that our family, parents of our students who are in the medical field have been pretty consistent in their response to my question, and then with regard to the statement made by the president of the OEA, who is the affiliating organization for both our teachers and classified union. So I wanted to bring that forward for your consideration this evening, Board of Education. We really do need to have some direction as far as masking for this year. I can tell you that since this afternoon, the Solon schools have made a decision to require masks for students under the age of 12. Mr. Bolden released that this afternoon. I can tell you that at the next board meeting, Dr. Clark from Nordonia will make the same recommendation, and their plans are beginning to align with what our initial plan was at the beginning of the summer. So I'm interested to know your opinion. I provided some information with regard to the opinions of the medical professionals who live in our community, who are parents of our students, and I'm interested to hear your opinion about this.
Well, I'm in the medical field, and before I'm a board member, I'm a parent, and I can tell you right now, unless you can show us the science that masks work, I would rethink that. I would make it optional. I think that's the best way for both sides, is just make it optional. Let the parents decide. It's their choice, it's their kids, They know their kids better than we know their kids. I'm in the medical field. I can tell you right now, masks don't work.
Well, I am concerned because I do work in a pediatrics department, so I do see what comes in and out on a daily basis, and just because we're not seeing necessarily, if your bottom line is death and hospitalizations, and just because we're not seeing as many of those as I guess would justify, there are definitely long-term effects when you have COVID, and for some people, and we need to do our best to make sure that all our kids are safe and protected, and let's be honest, nobody wants to wear these. I mean, and it's not a matter of fear or following media, or for some people, sure, it is. But, I mean, I don't want to go and work on a daily basis and wear this. This is indefinite for me in my job, but as of now, for me, it's kind of a necessity. And as you were saying with the RSV, when they test for COVID, they test for younger students, like I think it's the 14 under. They're testing for RSV, flu, and COVID. And so when there has been an increase in some of these things, not flu, but RSV, you see generally.
all those three together now.
Please respect the protocol of the meeting. Please respect the protocol of the meeting.
In my experience in our department, we have seen an increase in RSV, but that's not even,
But there's an increase in RSV because there's masks that are off now. The mandate is lifted. So now you're seeing the winter viruses come out now because everybody has been either in quarantine or masked, and now their immune system is down. So yes, you're going to see an increase in that. That's common. That's going to happen.
Right, and we are seeing an increase in COVID as people are letting their guards down, and that's what we want to do. But a week or two ago, none of the schools were going in the direction that we were discussing. They're starting to kind of reverse their decisions because of what we're seeing with the latest CDC guidelines and with the Summit County Health Departments, the Cuyahoga County Health Departments. It's not just in Ohio State. We're seeing every state has an increase right now. Every state. So, like I said, bottom line, we're all up here. We all care about our kids, your kids. We need to do our best to keep them safe. We're not saying one kind of student or is more important than the other. We want to keep everybody safe and do what we can at this point. And I'm just concerned about what we're seeing over the past month or so in every state.
Mrs. Powers, are you recommending any changes?
Well, I would like to just introduce the quarantine language that's going to be impacted by the masking, and maybe that would add greater clarity to this.
Ms. Powers, with all due respect, I think the quarantine's gonna be a separate issue. And I'd rather just keep discussing the mask issue first, because I know the quarantine impacts it, but I think this is the elephant in the room. I think it's an absolute travesty that the administration and the schools have been put in this position, but guess what? Here we are. That's not our choice. We didn't want this. We didn't want to wear them. And the decisions that were made, even when this plan was put together, 5-6 weeks ago, it was a different environment. Now, we teach a curriculum, we can teach statistics, and anybody knows you can make statistics say whatever you want it to say, and I'm not going to sit here and debate who's right or who's wrong. If we were to, in the past, have a bed bug outbreak or measles or something, who would your first call be? Summit County Board of Health. Summit County Board of Health, Cuyahoga County Board of Health yesterday issued guidelines, or yesterday or the day before, about masking. Now, I'm not going to sit there and debate. I look at the New England Journal of Medicine. I try not to look at social media and all this. We can all go back and forth on which study is which. That's not the decision. I've said it from the beginning, and I'll say it again, we are not epidemiologists. No one in this district is. No one in this district, when this started, can call back to say, hey, you know, when this happened in your district 10 years ago or 20 years ago, what did you do? No one was alive with any guidelines. And that's what we've been facing for, 16 months. So here we are, and we have a decision to make. You know, if I was having surgery, minor or major, I wouldn't want to look up and see the surgeon without a mask. You know, they've been wearing masks for 100 years. We can debate every statistic, you know, about masking, not masking. That's not who we're here. But at the end of the day, our students are not statistics. We lose one student. We lose one staff member to COVID. And Delta variant, you want to argue it or not. But every medical publication's out there saying it's increasing. And yes, we're seeing, you know, dramatic RSV down south. Why is that? I don't know if it's because they were wearing masks or not. I've never seen that. I just know it's dramatically increased when we don't normally see that till October, November. Why was the flu reduced? You're going to say it's from the mask or not the mask? Why was flu dramatically reduced when nobody had been wearing masks up until then, and all of a sudden there's no flu? There are very few cases of flu. So we can debate this back and forth. But I'll say it again, our students are not statistics. We are not epidemiologists. I'm inclined to follow what the Summit County Public Health, the CDC, the Ohio Department of Education, the guidelines that we're receiving. That's all we can do. We can't rely on every other statistic and every other survey that's put before us and every other medical, because that's not our position or even our skill set to look at every report that's out there. You know, I know people that won't get the vaccine, they're taking some other medicine, they believe they're safe. I'm not going to argue with everybody's bodies if that's what they want to do. But what do you tell the student that is wearing a mask and then now, you know, well, why isn't that other student wearing a mask? And you know there's going to be bullying and you know there's going to be repercussions that way. So we could debate everything that's going to happen to these kids. But I think we need to err on the side of caution. Maybe this is a 6-week thing and we see if the region can turn it around. But every hospital's full, you know, that is having the big outbreaks, and I think we're trying, like Ohio did from the beginning, to get ahead of it. And that's, you know, again, you disagree with me, I'm fine with that. I want to follow the guidelines of the people that we would be relying on any other medical issue in the district in the past, and that would be the Summit County Public Health. I know we're seeing hands, and I'll just support the president that is not protocol to open a debate. This is not a debate. This is not an open meeting. This is a business meeting. We've had remonstrance. You know, I'm sure we'll get emails, and that's an appropriate forum. But we're not going to engage in a debate now. And Madam President, I'll support you in that decision to follow protocol.
Thank you.
I'd like to hear from all my colleagues, though.
And I'm just going to add one more thing. Had we not followed the guidance of the Summit County Health Department throughout the year last year, our kids would have been stuck at home a lot more. We were able to keep them in school through the year, you know, hybrid, but we were able to keep them in school, hybrid for the older ones. And I said this before, other schools were in and out every time the color code for the county changed. Next day, they're back at home for indefinitely until had we not followed their guidance, I think it would have been a hot mess last year with our kids.
And we do know that quarantine is a big topic, and we're going to hear about that next, but I just thought that this needs to be vetted more before we go on to the further impact of quarantines.
All I'm asking is just show us the facts. If there's research out there that masks work, then let's see it. I haven't found any research on it. I found research that masks don't work, but I haven't found any research on it that masks actually work. That's all I'm asking. Show us the facts. Follow the science. Everyone wants to follow the science. Let's follow the science.
So how do you equate the fact that the flu was non-existent? Are you saying they lied about statistics?
Because they weren't testing for this flu. They are taking the PCR test off the market because they can't distinguish between the flu and the COVID test.
When I had flu, it was a type A, and they tested it, and it came back. So I can't imagine
kids
that
are being
they
tested
just.
for RSV,
That was
flu, and
before COVID.
So you're
And
saying-
since COVID,
so
the
you're
kids
saying
are
there
being
was
tested for
just as
RSV,
much flu
flu,
as
and
we
COVID.
had before.
Look it up. All I'm doing is saying do your research. There's a lot of research out there.
There's also a lot of, I don't wanna say false research, but
No,
some-
there's a lot of that too. That's why I
Right.
said
I'm,
you've gotta
I'm
do
saying
your
trust,
research and make
trust
your-
the health
make a-
professionals that make these decisions. We are not epidemic, I mean, we're gonna discount Summit County Public Health, CDC, who are we supposed to go? Are we just supposed to
American
go out on the
Academy of
internet and say,
Pediatrics.
okay, we found this report, it goes against the CDC, it goes against Summit County Public Health, Cuyahoga County Public Health, it goes against everything they're saying, and we're supposed to take that over the people that we rely on for medical?
You know what, as a parent, I do, I'm sorry. I do what's in the best interest of my child. I don't always agree with what the doctors say. I do my own research and then I make my opinion or my decision.
I do, as a parent as well, put a lot of faith in the thousands of doctors who part of the American Academy of Pediatrics. That is one thing that I will put my faith in as well. We're learning about a lot of these things as it's going. So what may have been true 6 months ago is not necessarily true today. But, I mean, yeah, people can find anything to support the reason one way or the other.
And that's why I think it's a good idea to make it optional.
Well, the only.
We're a board of 4, do you have an
I'm
opinion,
looking
Mrs. Gordon?
I'm looking, just one more thing. I'm looking at what many of our parents said, and it was a pretty overwhelming amount in these surveys. And we asked the district, well, as far as the surveys, they've been coming throughout the year. So whether they all answered them or not, those who did answer was a pretty high percentage.
But here's the thing, we gave them a choice last year. We gave them a choice, either online or in school, correct? We gave them a choice. Why can't we give them a choice this year? What is different about this year?
They do have a choice between online.
I'm not saying that, but I'm saying give them a choice about their mask. Let them make their own decision.
Adrian, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I've been very clear if I've talked to anybody about this. First and foremost, I do believe parents usually, parents know their kids the best. I do believe that. I strongly believe that. I think that they should be the final decision makers in their children's education. So I'm gonna put that out there first. I strongly believe that. This is a very strange and uncomfortable place for me. So as the only parent sitting here who has a special needs kid who has, had to deal with lots of things that come with that, I'm very entrenched in the special needs community here, and I think you heard a little of that today. So the medically fragile families, they come to me and they talk to me. And so I understand you guys are out there for your kids, and you want to protect your kids, and I get that, and I'm strongly empathetic. On the other hand, I have families are saying, my kid's got cancer, my kid's had an organ transplant, please, please protect my kid. And so I'm listening to the CDC, I'm listening to the Board of Health. My brother's an Ivy League trained physician. My sister works for the Department of Public Health in DC, and one of my best friends is on the infectious disease team at Ahuja, and they all say, I gotta follow the CDC. So that's where I'm at. I'm gonna continue to listen to you guys, but that's where I'm at. So right now, I think we need to stay the course and follow, because at the end of the day, none of us know. And we're not gonna know for a really long time.
But I got just one thing to say. So how is one student who's wearing a mask, who another student is wearing a mask, how are they gonna protect that other student? I mean,
It's double, that's all.
But I'm just saying though, I mean, especially the ones that are vaccinated and everything else. If they're wearing masks, they're protected. Why is it somebody else's, and I feel for everybody who's got elements or whatever, and I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is, why is it the next person's responsibility to look out for
And
the
in
one
most
that are
cases,
fragile?
in
I
most
mean,
cases,
and don't
Angela, I
look
agree
at
with
me
you.
as if I'm like, mean. I'm not. It's just, as a parent, you are responsible for your child, correct? And making sure that they're safe.
We live in a society that has driving. We can't just go out on the road and decide to ignore the rules. That's called living in a society.
I'm not saying I'm
let
following the
me
rules.
finish, Angie. At the same time, they're telling us the Delta variant is rampant. They're saying that even if you're vaccinated, you can get it, and even if you get it while you're vaccinated, you can transmit it. That's why we're trying to take as much precaution as possible. Do we know the complete outcomes? No. Do we know the long-term effects of COVID? No. Do we know that there's not a vaccine in 100 years that you get past two months, that if you've had no effects of the vaccine, you're going to? That's a statistic that I heard on. You know, we're going to debate every statistic.
Can I ask you this? How are they testing for the Delta variant? I'm just wondering.
I'm not an epidemiologist.
But I'm just
Look it
saying,
up.
they're
Do your
calling it Delta
research.
variant. I will do my research. I'm just saying, but how are they going to distinguish COVID through a Delta variant?
I would
I just
imagine
wanna
this,
know.
I would imagine the science the same way they understand variants and flu from year to year.
Well, according to the science, when you have a variant of something, the likelihood of it, the strength of it keeps going down. It doesn't get higher, it goes down.
And the fact that we have a variant is because we didn't get rid of COVID, and it keeps growing, and it has the opportunity to be a variant because it hasn't been stopped. The more you have COVID out there, the more you're gonna have it keep mutating. That's the way viruses work.
Kind of like the flu.
Exactly, and we know that even the flu immunizations aren't the efficacy that we're seeing in the COVID vaccine. So we can debate every statistic you want.
I know. It's a hot subject.
I'm just trying to protect every student.
And I do think there's a very good chance, whatever your opinion may be, that at some point this is going to be taken out of our hands, to be honest. I mean, you're already seeing the same close down activity, I think. We're starting to see the pullback. So we're having a lot of debate. 2 weeks from now, this might be a totally different conversation.
Many Ohio colleges
And-
declared today mask, and it, you know,
It's easy to push it on to school board members
Sure.
and say, like, literally, guys, we like make $200 a month. And we're being asked to make these decisions
Before
for people's
taxes.
lives. Right, before tax. And I mean, I know you're laughing, like but that's where we're at, you know? And these are really big, important conversations that we're having, like not little conversations.
And I'm just going to put this out there too. Whether you decide to get vaccinated or not, obviously your own personal choice. Even within family members, there's some, I mean, I see it among my own extended family. It's very strongly for it, very strongly against it, even within the same immediate family. And we're not really in the business of policing who wants to get vaccinated and who doesn't. But I mean, really, let's face it, for some people who choose not to wear masks or walk around masks, I would be concerned about some of the children who are among some of the other children who they decide they don't want to, they're not deciding not to wear masks because they've been vaccinated, they just do not want to wear masks. And I mean, it's just a risky, slippery slope right now. And there's a lot we don't know about it, but what we do see, and it's not having a media scare. I mean, they love to embellish some of these stories that are going on, but every state has seen an increase. And I don't know, is anybody else?
Go ahead.
I just wondered if I could ask a question. I'm not sure, and it might have changed, but I think we were gonna have our desks still like over what was recommended, the 3 feet. Is that correct still? So if that's what's recommended, is there any way, okay, when everybody's together, they want them in masks, but is there any way while they're sitting at their desk and they're farther apart than what they even need to be by the CDC, that maybe while they're sitting there, they could take their masks down? Because I know my little one, she was virtual last year. She hasn't been in school since she was in 2nd grade. She's gonna be so shy with her mask. She's actually getting an expander before school starts. She's gonna be talking funny. She's not gonna ask questions. She's not gonna participate. And I have a lot of teacher friends, and they've said the same thing, like the participation goes down. So maybe while they're away from other kids, like maybe that would appease everybody. They could sit there with their masks off, but when you get up, when you're in the hall, if you're all closer, you have to have them on.
So we're not, last year, we had our 6-foot distances, and we're not doing that this year because we want everybody in the schools. Otherwise, we're back
I thought it
to,
was 3 feet now by CDC, but she's still even gonna keep it farther, she said, just for extra safety. So if CDC says 3 feet, we're staying farther than 3 feet.
that's the minimum.
Could that be like a compromise maybe to make everybody happy? Or would that make everybody happy? I don't know.
I think once we get to the screens I'm going to present with quarantines, you'll see where that's a little complicated. Because the quarantines are still based on a 6 foot of social distance. Now we're within that range, or less than that range. So it's a complicated puzzle that we have to work through.
And I know you're going to, there's more in this that we
No,
need to get to.
continue the-
so.
Well, what
Go
I
ahead,
would, I
continue.
just wanted to add to just your thought process this evening, board, is, in the conversation this afternoon with Commissioner Skoda, I think you've probably heard the county is now in the substantial range, because of the increase in the virus. And Donna has said something, because, you know, the superintendents have been pretty terse in saying, why isn't the county, why isn't the Ohio Department of Health, why isn't the governor? Senate Bill 22 took that ability of their making mandates regarding the health in our state away. And so that then puts the focus right on boards of education to make the decisions that were once made at the state level. So I just wanted to tell you that's why Commissioner Skoda and the other health commissioners do not have the ability now to make that mandate based on that legislative language. And she did indicate that CDC and the Summit County Public Health is recommending masking of vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals when indoors, unless being in activities such as physical education. So although they haven't mandated the masks, the recommendation is as strong as they can go given the restrictions and legislative action now. And if not for that legislative action, I think we would have had probably a more direct response from the people in the health office. And to Mrs. DeFabio's question, according to what Donna told us earlier today, that only genetic sequencing can be done to determine the Delta variant. So there is a way of doing it. It's through genetic sequencing. So I don't know if that's new information for you or not. So the health care folks in the state, in the county level, the CDC and the Pediatric Association are all strongly recommending masks, not only for the unvaccinated, but now I've heard today from our Summit County Commissioner, even the vaccinated individuals. So although that may not be a decision you may want to make this evening, we have 2 weeks before the next board meeting. As to Mrs. Gordon's point, things continue to evolve. I don't think this virus is going to go away between now and then. In fact, you heard from the doctor parents tonight, and I heard it from the commissioner earlier today. It does in fact look like it's going to get pretty spiked here in the next few weeks. One of the things that the board might consider is starting the school year as we suggested, but then reevaluating come, say, NAOEA Day, which is 6 weeks out of the first full week of school. That would allow parents with the understanding that, you know, we continue to be diligent and we're evaluating the situation. And if we have a mask situation here as we kick off the year, we're good about paying attention to the science behind this and seeking the opinions of the healthcare professionals to make decisions. But I do want to walk you through this quarantine bit, because I think, to your point, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but to your point, the distance piece is going to play largely in this conversation. And in central office, we've talked a lot about the implications now that we've moved inside 6 feet. What does that look if we have a positive case? And what we do know is that what the county folks have been telling us is that both students need to have masks on. So if Mrs. Welker decides that Mr. Welker's son doesn't need a mask, but I decide that my daughter needs a mask, and if we get into a close contact situation, we're both out. So the decisions that parents will make, and I appreciate the desire for choice, will have implications for families who are deciding the opposite side of the fence. And so that's the bigger conversation here at the board, is the quarantine piece. And I know that the board has supported the quarantine support teachers, but it's hard when the kids aren't on campus and when they're learning virtually. And so it's a big part of this conversation. So I tried to put together, based on the latest information, what I know here about this quarantine situation. So when we have close contact, that means that somebody has a positive case, and we're closer than 6 feet. And what we have been able to do now in our school district, in order to get kids back on campus to 98%, is that for preschool through grade 8, the students are going to be at least 4 feet socially distanced. It's a long distance from 6 feet. And for the older kids, 9 through 12, because the campus is so large, we are going to say that the kids will actually be at a minimum of 4.5 feet, but that doesn't make the 6-foot standard. And so that is a part of this conversation. So if we have students that get within this close contact and somebody's not masked, so one or the other is not masked, what happens then is that it has implications for the other student as well. So for the parent who's deciding, okay, my choice is to send my child to school with a mask, but then we have this situation happen in the classroom, it's going to put both of those families in a quarantine situation, and that's where the rub is here. So a parent's right to choice on this side, and a parent's right to choice on this side, when it's two different choices, in a circumstance that the school district is now in, it's going to be impactful to you, no matter what your choice was.
So if both kids wear a mask, then you're saying they don't have to quarantine?
It depends. Let me get through this. Okay. So in the case where we have close contact, kids are closer than 6 feet, and we have somebody without masks. We have the case where we're talking quarantine, and we're back to where we were last year with setting kids out and kids learning a shared screen or through the quarantine support teachers mostly. And again, they must be fever-free for 24 hours, and they have to have their symptoms improving to come back to school. Those are for the unvaccinated children. So we're talking about the younger kids here. For our vaccinated high school and some of our middle school students, if they run into the circumstance, they do not have a limitation to their activities if they've been quarantined. So that's the positive of the quarantine. The vaccination, I mean to say here. So if you have the same circumstance, kids are closer, one kid's masked and one kid's not masked. If they're vaccinated, it's like a security around them. They would not be quarantined from school or social activities. But what the county and the CDC is saying, but other activities, for example, if the family is faith-based, they're saying that your child should be going to church on Sunday if they have the situation, even if they're vaccinated. And then they recommend that there's a test done after 3 to 5 days of the vaccinated student. And then, of course, if out in the public, if there's even a situation where you think you might have been in contact, and even if you're vaccinated, they're asking those individuals to wear their masks for 14 days. So that's the latest guidance if you have vaccinated versus unvaccinated without one of those parties in a mask. Jen, the next slide. So here's what's a little different. So both kids are masked. So Chad's mom sending him to school, my mom's sending me to school. And we both are wearing masks, and we're closer than 6 feet. If there's a positive in that classroom, Chad and I can continue to come to school, and we can continue to do our after-school activities unless we have a symptom of COVID. And then we have to follow the quarantine guidelines for other settings, which means if I'm going to go to church on Sunday, I'm not going to go to church on Sunday now because I have this close contact situation and I'm not vaccinated. For the vaccinated student, again, there's no limitation unless there's a symptom that's being shown. And then for the vaccinated student, health officials are suggesting that those children would have a COVID test 3 to 5 days after exposure. And again, they're asking those children to continue to wear their masks when they're out in the public setting. So again, the difference between vaccinated versus not, and in this case, both of us had our masks on in school, regardless of our vaccination status. Next slide, please, Jen. So, and these are some exceptions to the quarantine status, and we do have families. We had 327 individuals in our school family with COVID positive case last year. That's a lot, 327. So if you have a case where you had been tested positive for COVID within the last 3 months, you would not need to quarantine because you have antibodies. And the person has recovered and there remains without COVID symptoms. And board, I want to tell you that this week I sent correspondence to my building principals and to Mrs. Honeycutt because the latest guidance from the Department of Education is suggesting that there's such long-standing effects to students who test positive for COVID that in some cases those children will become eligible for 504 plans or for an IEP depending on they call this the symptom of long COVID. Mm-hmm. So it is not just about the here and now. It's about some of the kids who tested positive who are not able to get out of the umbrella of being in COVID, and now there's repercussions for school districts through our testing process, where kids who have had COVID, who they are experiencing long COVID, will be eligible for 504 services and for special ed services. So, as to Mr. Felber's point, we don't even know what we don't know about this virus. And so, now we know, the staff knows here, that we're on the radar now. We may have students that may be eligible for special services because they tested positive and they're not able to get out from underneath this virus. Next slide, Jen. An additional exception here is inside the classroom setting. So we have to make sure that inside a classroom setting, when students have the masks on, that they have to wear them appropriately and they have to fit well. So our staff did a great job last year of educating and re-educating about mask wearing. And these exceptions to the quarantine for kids do not apply to the adults that work with them. And so this is a language that's really just only about addressing quarantine situations with the students, and that does not apply to the staff. So additional considerations, and board last year you stuck pretty golden with the 14-day rule because we followed the science, and when a student tested positive or were involved in the quarantine situation, students stayed out for 14 days. But one of the things that we'll have to decide here moving into the next year, if we're going to stay there at the 14-day quarantine period, if you're going to modify that to 10 days as long as no symptoms occur. Some school districts are going with the 10-day quarantine instead of 14 days. And then the other one is that we could have a modified quarantine of 7 days, but the parent would have to get a negative test on day 5, and the student would no longer have any symptoms being presented. So we'll have to talk through that, but I think that's a little bit down the line once we figure out what the board's desire is with regard to the masking.
Can I ask a question? Just with, what if one of my children gets sick throughout the school year, and I don't believe it's COVID, you know, they have a cold, they have a fever, and I don't want to get them tested, do I have to quarantine them for 14 days, or for 14 days anyways?
If it's a symptom of COVID, the answer is yes.
But everything's a symptom of COVID. What do you consider not a symptom of COVID?
Well, and that was a question this afternoon to Donna Skoda, because the one thing that we know is it was a struggle for families, especially families who had repeated quarantines. We had some kids out for a month at a time because of COVID, right? And so what the answer was today, that the Summit County Public Health is going to be providing different guidance for schools with regard to symptoms like that. Last year was one symptom and the child was home. They're supposed to be redeveloping their guidance, and it's going to be posted here in the next week or so. But what they did say is that they're going to suggest that before a student comes back to school, that we have to rely more on testing rather than a doctor's note. And so that's the guidance that we received today. We're waiting for something in writing that was sent to us verbally this afternoon. But you know how last year we had all those flow charts and probably gave you a headache? We'll be developing updated ones based on what the Summit County Public Health officials and ODH are telling us.
And if I choose to not to get my child tested, what kind of, is he gonna lose out on academics? Is there gonna be something where he's gonna get asynchronous work sent home, him or my daughter? I mean, how does that work?
That's a great question. And so, and I'm sorry to deviate here, but the board has employed quarantine support teachers. So each of our buildings has one assigned up to them right now. And in a case where a family has a quarantine situation, either a positive case or a quarantine case because of a close contact, what happens is if it's a positive case, I'm calling the family. If it's a quarantine case, once the district nurse knows about the situation, she's informing the building principal, and that then links the quarantine support teacher to that family. And the quarantine support teacher is the bridge between classroom lessons on campus and helping to support the child while he or she is home. Been very successful last year with this, and so that's the model that will continue into the new year. Some of the older classrooms will do something called screen sharing. It's not live streaming. It's not like that, because live streaming you're right up there, and there's a privacy issue to families that way. So what our secondary teachers will often do is they'll set up their a dual computer, whether they're using their Chromebook to manipulate maybe the whiteboard, but then they have their student on the other computer, so the student can key into the lesson. But the benefit of that is that your house is not on display to a whole classroom of kids, you know what I mean? So the teacher can communicate and keep the child close to the lessons in real time. And sometimes we do that screen sharing in addition to the quarantine support. So we actually try to keep the students up to pace with their lessons with the extra staff that we have to do that.
And I will tell you that example that you gave with the students being live, as my son had to be, like I said, 4 weeks out of the total of the year that he had to miss because of quarantine, and I'm not very happy about it. However, when those support teachers were incredible, and then when he was on live with his class, the teachers engaged in him too. Andrew, what do you, like, he participated, you know, what do you have to say about this discussion? He wasn't left out during that time as best as he could be.
Maybe I missed something, but I just want to clarify. Like I said, my son and my daughter, they get sick. We were like, we're not testing them. We'll keep them home for 2 weeks. To return to campus, do they have to have a negative test, or is that 2 weeks good?
That's the guidance I'm waiting for. Yeah, and so as soon as we have that answer, we sent a lot of questions to Summit County, and they don't want to answer each of the superintendents individually. They want to put their guidance up, and then once I get it, I'll be pushing that out to our families. Thanks for the question, though. So you see the bigger implication for the masking piece here, and I guess board, what I'm interested to know, and maybe you don't want to make the decision tonight, but the health officials, and you heard it from our medical parents, are now suggesting it's masking for everyone regardless of the vaccination status, all the way up the continuum. I don't know if that's the direction the board seeks to go. Right now, we're walking along the line of the unvaccinated, but the local health officials are now suggesting that maybe it's a return while we're inside for all parties to have masks. I don't know where we land on that. Maybe you need some time to reflect on it, but that is a bold move that has been suggested in that call earlier today.
And then the next board meeting, these students aren't in their soft openings yet, correct?
No.
Okay.
The next board meeting is the 18th.
Right. Teachers of returned students will not have.
Correct.
So,
I'd like to make the call in the next meeting,
Next meeting?
because I think things are going to change in the next 2 weeks.
Right.
I think we should, I mean, the kids won't be in school at that point anyways. I think we should wait until the next meeting.
Mrs. Fabi, are you okay with that? Yeah. Mr. Felber?
Well, we're just in the discussion portion of the meeting anyway, so.
Yes,
It's a
yes.
moot point.
Okay, well, I appreciate the feedback. This is hard, and this is hard for all 4 of you too, because again, it was much easier last year when it was said, this is what we're doing and have at it. Now there's just so much to think through, and all the direction isn't clear. Okay. The next thing, I just wanted to let the board know, I think I mentioned it earlier this evening, is that we do have 60 students, next slide please, Jen, that have signed up for our COVID clinics, and we will get those scheduled, I'm hoping, in the next week, so that they have at least their first vaccine before hitting the campuses. Direct Mart is, again, our partner, super easy to work with, and we'll be sending the dates out as soon as possible. I do have to say, board, we have about 10 parents who registered their children as young as a 5-year-old. I think they misunderstood. So I will be calling those families in particular to say that their student is not eligible at this time. And as soon as the vaccine is ready, I'm sure they are interested in signing up for that. The other thing that the survey talked about was the back-to-school mailer. I just find it a point of interest that we still have 600 parents who would prefer our letters to come home in the mail. So the staff at the board office have been busy preparing that mailer. That'll go out tomorrow or Friday at the latest. And then the other parents will get their information. We're trying to sort of sequence it so everybody's getting it at the same time. In addition to that, the SNAP codes will be mailed either Friday of this week or released on the email on Saturday. And that's really important. That opens the portal to parents to be able to get into the enrollment system and to update phone numbers and all that information. I mentioned, next slide please, that our bus routes are being finalized. Mark and Tracy and Chad and the crew have been working really hard to make sure that we have buses for all the kids. Pleasantly surprised, most of our families want to be back on the buses. So there's 48 children on each bus, and so there'll be packed buses this year, but we think that it's going to work out perfectly fine. I did want to mention, board, that yesterday afternoon, Chad and I met with Chief Noga and with Lieutenant Mason about entry and dismissal from our campuses, understanding the traffic patterns. Chief Noga and Lieutenant Mason have given us direction, and so we'll be providing that information to our families. They are very consistent and very regimented in how they want us to manage the traffic in and out of campuses, and so we'll be sharing that with our families as soon as we have some final details worked out with Chief Noga. They've asked for additional signage. They've asked to make some of the entrances one way. They've asked us to not use some of the entrances for entry and dismissal. So they're the experts. So
I appreciate their help
we're
in
going to take
that.
the lead on it, and we'll get information out as soon as all the details are known. And we appreciate the chief and lieutenant helping us with that just yesterday. Breakfast, lunch, and recess. Board, as you know, thank you for approving the extra lunchroom playground assistance. Mrs. McKinney, although not here this evening, is busy finalizing employment for that assistance. We're able to make the meals at the high school and middle school divided between the commons and the classrooms. That's good because we want the kids to be able to feel a little less rigid during their lunch periods. And so we are working diligently to maintain social distance so as to not increase quarantines through the lunch periods, and also enjoy their meals. And then recess for the small students, of course, they're going to be out, and we have the use of equipment this year. One thing that we heard today from Commissioner Skoda is no longer the need for the overabundance of disinfectant. And so she said to us, unless you have an outbreak in a classroom or you have a student who vomits, once a day with the sanitization is what she's recommending for the school year, so that's good news. And so we'll make adjustments to what we do with the janitorial staff. And of course, we'll be back on the playgrounds. The kids are super excited about being outside with their friends. Any discussion on meals and recess?
Not this time.
It hasn't changed since we first talked about it in May.
I'm just shocked that they're not, about the wipes and all that stuff, like they're not gonna continue with that, but they're just gonna knock it down to one time a day.
The misters, they're suggesting that it's not car
Contact
service
surface.
airborne. And so they're suggesting it's thorough cleaning and sanitization once a day, but again, if there's a sick situation or student becomes ill. And how we manage those situations is the class is actually taken to another classroom for the rest of the day so the custodial staff can do deep cleaning. That's how we've been managing that. Okay, and then lockers and backpacks. So big conversation I've been observing out on social media, lots of questions about what's with the clear backpacks, why are we doing it? And I did put a response out there over the weekend, but not everybody is on Facebook. So let me back up in history and tell you how we actually got to the backpacks. And it has implications to COVID just in the course of time. But before we get to the backpack piece, I wanted to let you know that the high school, middle school, and elementary administration have talked about this backpack locker thing several times, most recently just last week. And so the lockers at the high school and RBC and Dodge will be issued to students who want them. And the students will be completing a locker request form, and then the 3 admins and their staff will be issuing lockers to students at those 3 buildings who are requesting the use of a locker. Bissell and Wilcox students primarily use the lockers for their coats and boots, I should say, and hats and all those things. And we will continue to do that. But what the principals are working through at Wilcox and Bissell is a pattern of how do you get students out in the lockers without putting them into too much of a close distance, you know, maybe having every fifth locker student come out at one time, get their things, and go back in the classroom. So Misty and Lynn are working through processes and practices now that they're all back on the campuses that they are familiar with, and those details will be released by the principals directly, first through the teachers and then to the parents. Now, the history of the clear backpacks is interesting. You know, we had student voice this evening, and we really espouse that, and we love it when the kids are involved in really intellectual conversations. And through the strategic plan, now 4 years ago, when we started the conversation, we had students as part of that. But 2 years ago, before COVID happened, as part of the strategic plan, all 5 principals have principal advisory councils, and I have a superintendent's advisory council. It was in conversations with the students who sit on my advisory council that this whole topic of backpacks came forward. And they desired, in total, and those administrators who were there can back that up, to be able to carry backpacks in school, because they have so many things. They have their heavy textbooks, they have their Chromebooks at that level. The Chromebooks were already issued to the high school, middle school students. And so they started to talk to the administrators as part of my council about, well, why can't we carry backpacks? So they started to plant the seed, and this was probably in December of 19. So shortly after winter break, administrators started, because what the kids have to say, I want the admins to know about it. So we started to talk about what do we need to do about this whole backpack issue, because the students are desiring to put their things in the backpack. The administrators at that time said, well, backpacks are an interesting thought, but we're concerned about the safety and security piece along with backpacks, putting stuff in there that can't be visible to the eye usually. And so administratively, we began the conversation about these clear backpacks, and then fast forward, district shut down, it's COVID. And when we started last year with COVID-19 in the pandemic, none of the kids had lockers. And we knew at that point that the idea of the backpack, number one, addressed the concerns of the kids on our council who were speaking on behalf of their peers. They wanted to carry backpacks in school. Addressed the concern of the administrators and staff who were concerned about backpacks that you can't see the things that are inside. And also addressed the concerns that we needed some way for kids to be able to keep their supplies in the classroom because they didn't have the use of lockers. And so last year, thank you, board, you supported us in purchasing backpacks for all the students who are on campus. They weren't the most expensive backpacks, and I can tell you they didn't last, many of them. We had to reorder through the years. Thank you, Chad. But in evaluating the clear backpacks from the vantage point of the school personnel and understanding that I think Dr. Hebert told me before she left that she had 3 or 4 high school kids who wanted lockers. I'm not talking athletic lockers, the lockers in the hallway. That's probably about all of the requests that she had. Mr. Reese had fewer than that at the middle school. And so the kids had to learn to adjust to not having lockers. Now, they can have a locker if they want, and they were offered it last year, but they have determined that they're not needing lockers, and so they haven't had them last year, and we'll see what happens in this coming year. So, although it started by a conversation with students at my advisory council as a desire to be able to carry backpacks, followed through by conversations with the adults about safety and security, and then followed through by the pandemic, that's the history of how the conversation regarding clear backpacks came to be. And so, because we're still in the stage of not having many students wanting a locker, which means most of the kids are going to be carrying their belongings all day long, I have to also be listening to the teachers who are in the building and the staff members who are concerned about what's inside those backpacks. With the little ones, it's not necessarily a concern about knives and things that are unsavory. It's more about the little ones bring lots of Legos and stuffed animals and things that aren't supposed to be in school. And that's the true statement. It's a distraction in the classroom. So that's the decision, the way it was made, was with regard to how that process came to be, and also understanding that we are still going to be working against congregation in the hallways this year. And so if the students are requesting a locker, that's great, we'll get you one. But the high school, middle school, and Dodge administration have decided that they would preface that with students visiting their lockers at the beginning of the day, students visiting their lockers at the end of the day. They'll still be carrying their backpacks throughout the school day. The backpacks won't be in the lockers, they'll be with the kids. So I don't think I ever explained the history, and I wanted to explain how we ended up here and the reasons why the clear backpacks are being asked for the coming school year.
So I've had a ton of calls on this particular topic the last 2 weeks. Parents are all over the place on this, but, so I promised to ask some questions. So the first is, some parents are, either complaining that they can't afford the backpacks because they have to buy them this year, or they can't find them. So do we have a message for that?
So I know that just last week during the principals meeting, the admins went out and looked online through Amazon, and they were there. Other vendors such as Under Armour have them; those are the expensive ones. So it depends on what the family prefers as style and durability, I guess.
So was there communication that went out that here's places that you can buy them?
No, it hasn't, but happy to
Yeah.
do that. We can do that, obviously, and there may be some local vendors that can help us with that too.
Yeah.
And another question I had was, for families that the kids would rather have lockers, can they have a choice? So if they're gonna use a locker and not carry stuff, can they just use the locker and not do the backpack?
Well, again, they're only going to the locker AM and at the end of the day. So they're not going to be able to visit the lockers during the day, and that's the problem with that. We had thought about that, but because it makes sense for students to have the backpacks to carry their belongings because they're going to be with them all day, the traditional colorful backpacks don't meet our needs.
Okay, and then, the last comment, I actually had, 3 parents, convey a concern that we're doing this addresses safety for the students, but if the staff's not carrying the same thing, are we really addressing safety? So I just wanted to make that comment because 3 different parents said the same thing.
Can you explain that a little bit more?
So they're saying if we're requiring the kids to have clear backpacks, the staff, this is just parents, I'm just conveying what I was told by 3 different parents, they would like to see staff also have clear. So I'm just stating some concerns from parents, and whatever you do with that, I'll let you do with that, so.
Interesting.
I find that interesting because, I mean, I know our staff goes through background checks and that's foolproof, but I've never heard of in any district, or at least around here, about staff carrying clear backpacks, or I've never heard of situations in which a staff member was carrying a weapon of any kind.
And one of the parents did mention that they had a study that said there were 6 instances last year or something of staff having weapons on them.
Throughout the entire country?
I don't know.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if
I just
that's
wanted
enough
to
to
mention it
ask
though,
for clear
because
backpacks, but-
if other parents have that concern,
Yeah.
I mean, it's worth having a conversation about, but.
And if that's a number throughout the entire country, not that I'm trying to make light of it, but that's very, very, very minimal. However, I mean, since I have been teaching, no longer teaching, from where I started to where teachers are now, there's, been an increase of things that have happened in the schools. And, there's, when I was teaching, it was Columbine. A few years ago, it was Chardon. I can't say that I remember in recent years, an incident where a teacher had brought something in and it was a dangerous, and I understand, in one way I see they're trying to rationale, if the students are doing it, the teachers should be doing it, but I don't
think
know
there are
if 6 is
movements in areas to let teachers carry, right? And, wherever you are on the political spectrum on that particular topic, people are gonna have opinions. So I think this is based out of that concern.
And then real quick, you were asking about where they can order them. If you are going to order them, I would suggest, I've done it. I ordered one from Amazon, had no problem finding it from Amazon. However, when it came to me, it was much smaller than I would have expected. So if measure it maybe up again, just from own personal experience, measure it up against one of your backpacks you have, because the one I ordered, I thought would be great. It got a lot of reviews, and it was small.
And if they can't afford it, is there somebody they should reach out to?
I'm not sure, because we haven't had issues with that in the past as
Well,
far
they were
as not
supplied
including
last year, I think
back-
is the.
I'm saying in the past with people buying backpacks, we haven't had, and I'm sure there's case by case, we've had people maybe in the past call, but I haven't heard in the past of people asking us, having troubles with buying backpacks in the past.
So but there's a couple of organizations that have been working with Dr. Walker for donations here at the beginning of the year. So if you could follow up and just specifically request that from the organizations.
I have an
So
extra
we
one
may
if
have.
anybody needs one that you know of specifically. It was used for like 3 months last year from Amazon that we don't need this year.
Thank you, that's really, really nice.
It might be a good resource.
So anything else with regard to this? Any other questions history-wise of what we're doing?
I know, I think I've heard, when I was keeping an eye on some things, some people were questioning whether it's anything to do with sanitary reasons, and that's not why we were doing that.
Okay, and the last thing here, for your direction with regard to visitors and the use of facilities. Last year, the next slide, we were restricted in the visitors to our schools, primarily because of the fact that the custodial staff was stretched with all of the sanitization. We actually hired additional janitors last year to help with that. I don't know if you have a direction here. We don't have to do this evening, perhaps at the next board meeting. My request is we have all of the booster groups who have been meeting virtually and who have been at the library. I'm sorry, they haven't been at the library. They've been other places where groups were able to congregate. Library hasn't been open to that. So if there is an allowance and you're going to be somewhat restricted, I would suggest that the parent booster groups who support the kids in a million different ways may be allowed to have their meetings back on campus. Just an idea. And then further along the line, we would need some direction with regard to the rec leagues that use the basketball group that uses the facilities all winter long. Community theater has sent me a request, as well as community theater. I'm trying to think who else has been asking us. Oh, the dance studios who would use the facility, especially the high school come next summer. So some of that can wait, but I just wanted to plant the seed that we're going to need some direction on where you would like to go with this, and I'm really interested in allowing our parent groups back in because, for example, TVMB used to be on campus to do costumes and things like that for the show choirs, and they were restricted last year. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think we're near making a decision on that tonight, but I know we're getting, you've been getting inquiries and things with things not being virtual so much all the time now, meetings not always be virtual. I think that's where they're coming from, is that, well, okay, we're not doing everything virtual now, can we start to do this? If I would be interested in just, I mean, I know we've had things done before where we've had certain safety protocols in place and they had to have followed certain safety protocols. I know just like at the stadium, all last year during sports, we had our compliance officers walking around. I think some of these things could be doable if we have certain safety measures in place. But I don't think we're ready to have a big discussion on that tonight.
Okay. Well, I'll be sure that we're going to put it on the agenda to revisit on the 18th then.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Davis, you just prompted my memory for one more thing, and that has to do with the social distance at our venues. It was recommended earlier today that social distancing remain in place. So the seating at the stadium, the auditorium, and all the buildings, as well as the gymnasiums where families would come and enjoy watching their children compete. They still will include social distancing pieces. However, I do want to say, you'll notice on the agenda tonight, a whole bunch of student AV technical workers being recommended. That's the power behind our live stream. And so with that recommendation this evening, the students can begin to work with Mr. Welker and Mr. Curley to tune up our live stream ready to go once the students are back competing. Okay, and so just the final thing here, I'll adjust this. I didn't have a thought about the 18th, but before we post anything, because I don't know what to post yet, we'll create another draft plan for you to consider for the next meeting, and then thereafter we'll post it. Just an announcement here about soft reopening week again. It's a couple weeks out. And then in writing, what I mentioned earlier this evening about the orientation sessions for the parents who have children in the online option. Those are, parents don't have to attend both, it's one or the other. We just wanted to give them a couple, two different choices as far as time goes. And that will actually be hosted by Ohio Online Learning with Mrs. Farley and me assisting on those parent orientation sessions.
I've also had several calls on the soft reopening.
Yes.
So I think it's the parents that have the kids that have already experienced in the schools. So for instance, the 11th graders and 12th graders, they're really trying to understand the purpose, what's going to happen that day. The kids are complaining about it because they think that they know the school. So can you talk a little bit about?
Knowing the school is just one part of this. On the soft reopening day, especially at the high school, we have a new administration. And so Mr. Lynn will be meeting with classes that day. He needs to, get to know the students. They get to know him in smaller groups, and that's always better for building relationships. In addition to that, anybody new to the high school in those grade levels who don't have their Chromebook, that's the day for Chromebook distribution to students who don't have their Chromebooks. The students will be actually walking through their schedule, going to class, and the teachers in the classes of those students will actually be doing some baseline assessments so that when the whole crew is back the following week, the week of the 30th of April, they don't have to spend the time then, and it's always better to do it in smaller groups. That's just best practice. And so even though the juniors and seniors are confident about knowing the campus, things are different at the campus. There's protocols that are different at the high school campus than they were at RBC last year. And so everyone has something new to learn, and our ability to do it in small groups really goes a long way. The other thing is that's considered a school day. So if they're not on campus on their assigned days, it's an absence day already. We hate to start the school year with an absence already marked.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else, board? Great. I appreciate the conversation this evening. This is hard work, and don't have all the answers, but we'll get there. And I thank you for your thoughtful conversation this evening. We're always better when we're doing this together, so thank you for that. Mrs. Davis, you want us to just go into the second administrative report?
For the staff finders, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, board, as you know, we've been enhancing transportation with GPS on the buses for the drivers. Lots of new functions have happened. We implemented Edgelog a couple years back, which is the routing software. Now it's this next part that actually is impactful and helpful to parents. So this evening, Chad, our business manager, Mark, our transportation supervisor, and Tracy, assistant supervisor, want to provide a demonstration about Stop Finder and why this is going to be a great benefit to our families, and a little bit about how this is going to work and why we think it's a great thing.
Great, thank you. So we're very excited to introduce this second step of our 3-year plan of implementing Zonar and TransFinder. As you remember, last year we received a NAPT grant for $20,000 to support this new initiative, and we really appreciate the board's support last year, as we're becoming a lot more data rich, and it helps produce a better service to our community. So just as a reminder, year 1 was implementing Zonar, and so that allowed us to keep better track of attendance on our school buses through an automated Z-Pass. This year is Stop Finder, and then next year will be Wayfinder, which provides turn-by-turn instructions for our drivers, more like a GPS. And the goal of this is to be more efficient and also, most importantly, provide a lot of safety for our students. So without further ado, I want to introduce Mr. Desmond, who will talk more about the Stop Finder initiative in year 2.
Good evening, Board. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Welker and Superintendent Powers, for that wonderful introduction. So what is Stop Finder? Stop Finder is an easy-to-use, all-in-one application designed to alert parents on the arrival of the bus to their stop. This system is integrated with our TransFinder routing system and Zonar GPS to provide accurate and real-time data for parents. And as you'll see later on, you'll see what the parents will be able to actually see. So basically, in this map, this is what the administration part of it will see. The parent will see the red ring around it, and they will get an alert when the bus is nearing their stop. So that'll help us out. What other information is in Stop Finder? Stop Finder allows parents to see their students' bus schedule, also shows name, grade, school, pickup and drop-off times, and the bus location. So you see here the little animation of 2 phones. You'll have a map on one part of it, and you can swipe and see the actual stop location, the times, and pertinent information. And it's day to day, so you can swipe, as you'll see later in the nice video that we got, that you can swipe across, and it'll go to day and change as needed straight from TransFinder routing system. And how do parents log on? Parents are sent an invite to download the app via email and then asked to log in with a password. This is a very safe program. An average individual just can't go to their phone and they want to download Stop Finder, they can't. They have to have the invite from the program. So once they get an invite, then they make a login and a password. Okay, and here's a nice little video that we prepared, and this is what we're going to send out to the parents as this is their little training session that they can see when they get the invite. Of course, we got the music. Real feel-good music for everybody tonight.
While they're waiting, do the kids still have to swipe their
Yes,
catch?
yeah, that's part of knowing when to come on.
While
So
we're having technical difficulties, I guess I'll get to speak, I love public speaking. This is why I hide in my office. With the Stop Finder app, what it's gonna do is you're gonna actually get an invite. I think the week before the soft reopening, we plan to have an invite hopefully to go out to parents. The invite will ask you to download the app, just like when you when you sign up for Giant Eagle app or something like that. It's gonna ask you to download the app. The app will then, there's the music in the background. You'll download the app.
There we go.
There it goes. Oh, I don't have to talk anymore.
So this is the part where you get the invite, and then you can see the schedule on the phone. And all the information all your student information is automatically.
It tells you the bus number, the bus approach time, and the stop location for both morning and the afternoon routes.
As you're swiping, you'll see on Saturdays and Sundays there'll be no schedule. There's nothing going on. And there's a couple several options for languages and contact info.
Now with the map, what happens is that you actually create it's gonna show you a correct like geo alert, almost like a geofence around your stop. You can add up to 500 feet. You can put it around the bus stop, around the school, and set notifications to let you know when the bus is arriving and the bus is leaving. So if you're not sure if the bus is coming with your 7th grader, what time it's getting there, did the bus already leave, did we miss the bus, what's going on, that'll let you know how you do.
Does that offer any kind of messaging to that route or
It does, we're gonna get there in a minute, Mr. Felber.
I'll just sit there.
Say there's notifications.
And we did test this out when we had our test students, and it works pretty cool. It dings every time the bus comes in, and it gives you a note when the students being dropped off.
Now, you can choose to whether or not to have the push notifications on, just like you do with your phone, with any other app on your Android or your iPhone. Actually, we set up a test student, and I was getting alerts. Mrs. Powers was getting alerts. Mr. Welker was getting alerts. Mr. Desmond, and then I actually was getting them on my iWatch. So I was in the other room where I was on vacation, and then all of a sudden it was telling me my stop point. Your bus is approaching your stop. And then with this, you can actually go ahead and just share it. So the main subscriber on it is going to be your main email that's in your Dazzle, what you've had set up in Dazzle, what you get the Blackboard Connects through, and then you can choose, so if your child's going to a sitter, or grandma meets the bus, or grandpa meets the bus, you can set up and you can invite people to be subscribers, and you'll be able to see it. So if like maybe you're just going on vacation and they only need to know for 2 weeks, you can set a time limit on them as well. And then within our admin, if you forget your password, we can go in and reset your password for you. You just give us a call, and then that's the messages actually area. This is actually where we can notify you instead of getting a Blackboard Connect or getting a call from me saying, hey, your road is flooded, and I'm trying to call 4 or 5 people at 5:30 in the morning and tell them, hey, go to this bus stop. I can actually do a push notification and let you know, hey, we can't get down your street for whatever reason. You're going to have to go here, or the bus is running this behind. So I think that's it. Did I answer, Mr. Felber?
Yes, thank you.
Good.
I think it's gonna come back on some.
As long as I don't get any
phone calls
alerts.
and just ease some parents' minds on where the bus actually is.
And they can set that geo alert to up to 500
Feet.
feet
Yeah.
from the bus
So they
stop.
can set a geo alert where they want. They can set it to where if they want it to go off when the bus goes into the geo alert, then comes out, or either.
Just a point of clarification, it's 500 yards, right?
500 yards.
Right.
Very cool.
So I think the parents are going to enjoy using this. We've heard a desire for the district to provide this kind of a system for parents. They just, they have a couple of children at their house and they don't know when the bus is coming. They can't always get out the door, but now they know when that bus is arriving, either before or after school. And it also alerts the parents when the bus is leaving that geo zone so that they know that their child's on their way to school. So mom could be at work, get the alert, know that their child's getting on the bus, and then also knows when that bus is hitting the road and heading over to Dodge or where the bus is going. So I think our parents will like this a lot.
I think it'll be used a lot. Most
Oh, yeah.
people have phones, especially with the little ones, the kiddos,
Mhm.
who mom and dad, or maybe mom is at home and she's busy cleaning up, and all of a sudden, bing, oh. You gotta go get the kid up.
We make a couple phone calls a day.
We make a couple phone calls.
Can you go out and
Hey,
pick
the
them
bus
up
is
faster?
Yeah.
We all are. Time gets away from us, but I think the biggest thing with this is there's security and there's safety in it. There was other GPS things that we looked at, we talked about in the very beginning before we started with this 3-year plan. And there's another district that we kind of looked at, and if you go onto their website, you click the GPS link, it actually shows you location of every one of their buses at any given moment.
So you're just kind of opening it up for anybody, anywhere to go
Yeah.
meet a bus with your kids on it. So, I mean, with this, the only person that's gonna know when the bus is getting there is somebody that's authorized to know that, so.
I really appreciate that. Thank you
for,
so
letting me
much.
present. Is there any questions?
Not yet, but I mean, I'm glad we're at this point, man. I'm glad we have
Yeah.
this.
We do have, is the next, one more?
You want to talk about the communication plan?
Communications piece.
Yeah, so the communication plan, just go ahead.
Oh, okay, so we got, the routing mailer, is the week of the August 9th. We're gonna send out a Blackboard Connect, the week of August 9th. And then the Stop Finder email, August 18th. And then they can create an account for Stop Finder with the invite on August 19th. So I think this is the communication plan, so parents are aware that this is on the way.
I believe the Stop Finder invite, the email that comes before the invite, we're actually gonna include the link for the video.
Yeah, it'll
Kind of
include
give
the,
some instructions on how to do the download and how to look at it before you get that invite, so you can know what's going on.
So in essence, the first three items are trying to build the awareness about the program, both in a regular mail format and a electronic mail format as well, a couple different ways. Because then, when August 19th hits, you'll have a personalized invite, again, just for data security, for parent security too, of making sure that you only have access to your students. So there's a lot of heavy security in this to make sure that it's only going to the appropriate parents.
so once you get the invite, you go to the store and you download the app. And it'll kind of look like
Good.
this little icon right here. And then when you click on it, you'll get that right on your phone. So then you just show up.
It's nice to see you excited about it.
Doesn't take much anymore.
We got very excited when it came the first time to let us know the bus was approaching, and then after like the 25th time, we went, okay, we've done this.
Love that.
Any questions? Are we good?
No, but I appreciate you,
Thank you,
being
Ward.
here this late to explain it to us.
Thank you for having us. And thank you, Superintendent
Mark.
Powers.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so at this point, we're going to move on to, we've already done remonstrance, so we're moving on to our treasurer's report. One, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves the following meeting minutes, regular meeting of July 14, 2021, and special meeting of July 21st, 2021, as sent to the board under separate cover. Two, financial report, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education accepts the following financial reports for the month of June 2021, bank reconciliation, general fund financial summary report, and financial report by fund, as sent to the board under separate cover. 3, check register, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education accepts a check register for the month of June 2021. The total including payroll is $4,482,639.29. Do I have a motion to move, please?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Felber. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Gordon. Any discussion on this item, these items? All right, hearing none. Mr. Aho, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Felber?
Yes.
Mrs. Gordon?
Yes.
Mrs. DeFabio?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes. Those items pass 4-0. J, action items personnel. 1, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education accepts the certificated licensed personnel and/or contract recommendations detailed in the attached exhibit as per the dates, terms, and other applicable conditions specified pending satisfactory ORC background checks. 2, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education accepts the classified personnel and/or contract recommendations detailed in the attached exhibit as per the dates, terms, and other applicable conditions specified pending satisfactory ORC background checks. And 3, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education accepts the supplemental contract recommendations detailed in the attached exhibit as per the dates, terms, and other applicable conditions specified pending satisfactory ORC background checks. Do I have a motion to move, please?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Felber. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. DeFabio. Any discussion on these items? All right, hearing none. Mr. Aho, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Felber,
Yes.
Mrs. DeFabio,
Yes.
Mrs. Gordon,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes. Those items pass 4-0. Action items, new business K. 1, resolve that Twinsburg Board of Education accepts a donation from the Parker Foundation in the amount of $10,000 to award 10 $1,000 scholarships to students in the graduating class of 2021 per the attached exhibit. 2, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves a contract for the 2021-2022 school year with LT Transportation, 623 South Green Road, number 3, South Euclid, Ohio, 44121, for as-needed transportation services for extracurricular events and select special education, homeless routes pursuant to the terms and conditions set forth in the contract, as sent to the board under separate cover. 3, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves a contract for the 2021-22 school year with Suburban Transportation, 26 River Road, Hinckley, Ohio, 44233, for as-needed transportation services for extracurricular events and select special education homeless routes pursuant to the terms and conditions set forth in the contract, as sent to the board under separate cover. 4, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves a contract for the 2021-22 school year with Willow Transportation, 34799 Curtis Boulevard, Unit A, Eastlake, Ohio, 44095, for as-needed transportation services for extracurricular events and select special education homeless routes pursuant to the terms and conditions set forth in the contract, as sent to the board under separate cover. 5, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education authorizes the business manager to attempt to sell the attached listing of assets to be removed from the inventory that have been determined to be no longer needed for school purposes and or beyond their useful life per attached exhibit. If the assets do not sell, the Board of Education authorizes the business manager to dispose of the assets. The assets will be posted on an online auction site given there. 6, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves the agreement with the Educational Service Center of Northeast Ohio for one student to attend the Passport School Program for the 2021-22 school year at a total cost of $65,515. And it says what it is per day, breaks it down $355 per day for 179 days, $720 for speech services, $1,250 for OT services. This is a general fund expense as sent to the board under separate cover. 7, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves the agreement with the Educational Service Center of Northeast Ohio for the 2021-22 school year to provide up to 20 hours of audiology services at $107.95 per hour, 40 hours of hearing impaired services at $103.25 per hour, 75 hours of visually impaired services at $109.50 per hour, and 20 hours of orientation and mobility services at $75 per hour. This will be a general fund expense as sent to the board under separate cover. 8, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves an agreement with Educational Alternatives for 6 students to attend the day treatment program for 2021-22 school year. Prepaid tuition cost is $147,237, which reflects a $16,559 credit from the 2021 school year. This is a general fund expense as sent to the board under separate cover. 9, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves an agreement with PSI Associates Incorporated to provide speech-language pathology service for students attending the extended school year program, not to exceed a total of 20 hours at $65 an hour as sent to the board under separate cover. 10, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education authorizes a 2.25 percentage increase to the salary of the parent mentor effective for the 2021-22 school year. 11, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves a memorandum of understanding with the Twinsburg Support Staff Association regarding instructional assistants who possess teaching certificates, licenses, and who wish to apply for one-year teaching assignment as COVID-19 long-term substitute teachers, as sent to the board under separate cover. 12, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves a memorandum of understanding with the Twinsburg Support Staff Association regarding lunchroom playground assistance for the 2021-2022 school year, as sent to the board under separate cover. 13, resolve that the Twinsburg City School District Board of Education, in accordance with ORC 3313.90, hereby specifies the district's intent not to provide career technical education for all 7th and 8th graders enrolled in the Twinsburg City School District. However, the Twinsburg City School District will provide career technical programming for interested 8th grade students via Project Lead the Way, course offerings at R.D. Chamberlain Middle School. 14, resolved that the Twinsburg Board of Education ratifies the previous determination of impracticality of transportation for the schools and students listed below, and further resolved to approve in lieu of transportation payment for 66 students for the 2021 school year per the Ohio Department of Education for the following schools listed students kept on file in the transportation office, and those are listed below. And 15, resolved that the Twinsburg City School District approves the portrait of a graduate per the attached exhibit. 16, resolved that the Twinsburg City School District authorize the following personnel from the Twinsburg Fire Department to provide coverage at athletic practices and events during the 2021-2022 school year, and those names are listed below. Do I have a motion to move, please?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Felber. Do I have a second? Second? I will second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I actually do have something today. So I don't believe the process and subsequent resolution in K-14 meets the statutory requirements of ORC 33-2702. And posturing it today by trying to force a yes vote on 16 items by not allowing any item to be broken out for a separate vote, even before 2 of those items were presented to the board for the very first time, I find is a little bizarre from a political choice. But I personally also believe that I need to follow ORC code as I interpret it. So, especially because of the impact that this will have on families such as the one that presented tonight. So any collateral damage that's happening from this is being forced on an attempt to force a yes vote on 16 items. I don't know what else to say.
And we could have amended it again to be broken out. My objection to the breakout was the fact that it keeps getting broken out, and in a public meeting, we should have discussion, and when there's no discussion on the vote, yes or no, the public doesn't know the intent of the board, and to address it on social media in a private channel is not how this board should conduct business. I think that...
And I gave you a reason today. I said I wanted to hear the presentation first.
I'm talking about my reason for not breaking it out. Because the past history of the last 8 or 10 breakouts, they get broken out. Normally, in the previous years, when somebody asks for a number, something to be broke out, they're either abstaining or they want to explain, and that was precedent. They break it out, we'd agree, they discuss it, tell us why they're voting one way or the other, and that's fine. That's the open discussion. But when we break out and then don't have any discussion from those, and then they vote in a certain way, yes or no, it doesn't give the public any indication of what they're doing, nor does it show respect for the colleagues. If they disagree with their position, that's what discussion's for. That's the time where you say, hey, I have a problem, here's why, and discussion. But to break it out and then have no discussion whatsoever when discussion's requested, that was the intent. Now, we can still break this out, but, and again, it was unusual in that we did have discussion on the agenda for that particular topic, but that was my reasoning for not breaking things out, because I don't think it's fair to the public to not have a discussion.
In all due respect, Mr. Felber, you don't explain your yes votes.
Yes, I do, actually. When those situations were being broken out, I explained my yes votes and why I was voting and my intention to vote, and I requested discussion, and I still got crickets in the last meeting. And again, we can differ on opinions, but I think that the public should know why we're voting a certain way.
And I'm extremely accessible. If anyone ever wants to talk to me, I'm
talking in a
reachable.
public meeting. Not everybody is going to be able to get on a Facebook. Not everybody's going to be able to call you. I think this is the forum. This is where our comments are recorded and archived. It's not done through someone else's social media. This is the forum that the law says, and we can argue that if you want. That was my objection.
I am
to keep
legally
breaking.
empowered to speak what I'd like to speak, and when I don't want to speak, I'm also legally empowered to not speak.
And that's fine, but we are elected officials, and I think we owe the public explanation of our votes one way or the other. And again, to my colleagues, if they have an objection to something, maybe you can change our mind by talking about it, but
When was
not
the last time you voted no? Honestly.
about 3 or 4 hours ago. But I'm not going to sit there and debate my schedule on voting.
Okay. Outside of when I've asked for something like a breakout.
We have a lot of motions in front of us. We can still break this out. We still have to
Yes,
amend.
I'd like to make a motion to break out 14 from the vote.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Do we have any other discussion regarding this?
I'm just thinking through the procedure, because we have these motions in front of us. They've already been approved. Mr. Aho, I think we can do this, right?
You can amend it, yeah,
We can amend the red motions.
right.
Okay.
Okay. All right, and do we need any further explanation?
No, I think you have an amendment in front of you.
Okay. All right, so, Mr. Aho, would you call the roll, please?
This is for the amendment.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have motion to amend and,
Amending the agenda.
Right.
sorry,
Amending the agenda.
yeah, for amending the agenda, and we have a second.
So we're good.
Okay,
Just call it, roll then.
okay. Call the roll, please, Mr. Aho?
Mrs. Gordon?
Yes.
Mrs. DeFabio?
Yes.
Mr. Felber?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes. Okay, that item passes 4-0. So 14 is broken out. So at this point, we're voting right now on 1 through 13, correct, Ms. Rayo?
1 through.
You read them all, so it's actually all of those, with the exception of 14.
Okay. All right, so, yes, Ms. Rayo, would you call?
I mean, maybe we have some discussion about these other items.
Oh, okay,
I mean,
yes, I'm
first of all,
sorry.
thank you to.
I'm sorry.
Thank
We
you to
have a
Park,
lot- we do
thank
have
you to
some discussion.
Parker for, very generous donation. I don't necessarily recall an organization, Mrs. Powers, doing something that, that large and such from a private organization.
Right, I think this is a big surprise for the students who did receive this, and it was very much appreciated. And then as far as anything else on 1 through 13,
I do think it's unusual to have paramedic coverage at athletic practices, and this is directly related to the athletic trainer situation that's in limbo. So I'd encourage my colleagues to do what they can to move that situation through so legal can give us an opinion.
okay. So with that being said, Mr. Aho, would you call the roll for those items, 1 through 13?
Mr. Felber?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. DeFabio?
Yes.
Mrs. Gordon?
Yes.
Okay, those items pass 4-0. Okay. All right, now on to item number 14. Do we have any other discussion on item 14?
We do have the missing amount.
Yes, so we need to amend the wording in this, correct? Or at least put in the amount we had discussed, if I'm correct, we had discussed bumping that up to the 50%.
I discussed it.
Considering
I don't
that.
think I got any.
Well, I think we've discussed considering that, and I think it is I think it's a reasonable recommendation for this, so we're gonna be going in that direction, in just a few weeks, it looks like.
And these parents have been waiting for these payments.
Yeah. So I would like to make a motion to move on that, for raising this this amount so that these parents can receive their payment.
So you're making an amendment?
I would like to make an amendment, where does it doesn't have an amount, so where
No.
would we be?
Or where we inserted, I think you had a recommendation, Marty, where it was inserted in the language?
Right, and it's on the third sentence there, it goes in lieu of transportation payment of
Whatever.
the amount
Yeah.
for 66 students.
So what is your amount?
Add-
So you're making an amendment. I think I made the motion to accept all of them as read, so I'd have to accept the amendment. So do you have an amount recommendation?
Yes, me?
Yeah, because you're making the amendment.
I would say, the 50% that we were discussing earlier, which would be the $500, correct?
Yeah, I mean, that's not straight up 50%, but since we've been
Well,
at 215 for
close enough.
13 years, I'm,
Yeah.
So is that your amendment?
I would say yes.
I would accept that amendment of $500.
Okay.
So we have to vote on the amendment.
Yes, and just in additional, one comment I would like to make on this too is I would hope that if we get in a situation where somebody is in need of, in a desperate situation, I would like to see them, have a sit down and speak with Ms. Powers or whoever we need to see what we can do.
Theoretically, we should be having an impracticality vote where we can look at the special needs schools and potentially have some dialogue on that up front.
I'm sorry?
So theoretically, what we should be doing is having an impracticality of transportation vote up front, so we can determine on the special needs schools if we want to, look at them differently. And frankly, they're within 30 miles actually, so.
Yeah, and I will just, like I said, I will just comment that we did the same thing last year on the June 24th meeting. It was item 11, it did pass 5-0. And I haven't heard of, up until just very recently, any question regarding this. So that's where I stand on that. All right, Mr. Aho, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Felber?
Yes.
Mrs. DeFabio?
Yes.
Mrs. Gordon?
No.
Okay, that item passes, 3.
The amendment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The amendment to change the.
Amendment to change, the in lieu of transportation, and we're amending that to $500. That is being passed, the amendment's being passed at a 3-1 vote. All right, now for miscellaneous. I know we had a lot of discussion about a lot of things, but does,
You still need to vote on
We
it.
still have to vote on the motion.
I am sorry.
Yeah,
All
that's
right.
okay. It's a lot of changes.
Almost 5 hours in, 4 hours in, sorry. All right, so we need to vote on that. Do I have a motion to move, please?
I can make a suggestion, Mr. Hill, just read it in its entirety.
That would be good.
So,
yeah.
so
Thank you.
we're clear on the vote.
Resolved that the Twinsburg Board of Education ratifies the previous determination of impracticality of transportation for the schools and students listed below, and further resolves to approve an in lieu of payment of $500 for 66 students for the 2020-2021 school year for the Ohio Department of Education for the following schools. There's a list there, and the list of students are kept on file in the Transportation Department, and that's a total of 66 students.
Okay, so now at this point, we can call the roll, correct, Mr.
I think, if there's any other discussion, I would say that this is a 100% increase. It hasn't been done in 8, 10, 12
Yeah.
years. It's not in the norm of what our neighbors do, but things are changing. And again, I'd echo in light of, the information that we heard tonight, that we've never heard before, so.
Okay, motion moved in.
So I think the motion's already out there. It's
Okay,
just a
good.
matter of roll call, if I'm
All
not,
right.
unless anybody else has further discussion.
All right, Mr. Aho, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Felber?
Yes.
Mrs. DeFabio?
Yes.
Mrs. Gordon?
No.
Okay, that item now passes 3-1. Miscellaneous, anything? Does anybody have anything that we haven't talked about in discussion that they just want to add or share, or any good news happening besides getting our kids back in school soon? All right, hearing none. There is a need for executive session. Item M, that the Board of Education enters into executive session at exactly 10:46 to discuss employment, discipline, and compensation of public employees as per the Board of Education Policy 0166A. Do I have a motion to move, please?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Felber. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Gordon. Mr. Aho, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Felber?
Yes.
Mrs. Gordon?
Yes.
Mrs. DeFabio?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes. That passes 4-0. There will be no action taken, so we will not be taking any action after this meeting, but meeting is adjourned.
No. in executive session.
I'm sorry.